Chapter 797. Chinemo looked at the guy in front of him, not saying a word. Bojiu removed her mask, arching a brow. Trust me, I'm much faster than him when it comes to investigating. With that, Feng Yi was reminded of how Little Spade had shown off her amazing internet skills during the selection contest. But this matter would affect Little Spade's mood. The competition was about to start. If Little Spade was the one to investigate, it would mean. The intelligent Bojiu glanced at Feng Yi's expression and seemed to understand something. She smiled brightly. The competition will start in 27 minutes. It's not like I haven't crossed hands with Fatty before. It would take at least half an hour for him to check something. I can settle it in 10 minutes. Since Supreme Alliance has made it this far, the competition should be the most important. There were too many people's blood, sweat and tears in this competition. The Uncle Yin she knew, the Shui Yaoyao she knew, the Feng Shang she knew, and the pet she had found when she came here. She had always said it. Compared to his looks, she liked the Almighty's values more. He was the main attacker who could take on 5 opponents at once, but he had been a support for so many years. Because Supreme Alliance needed him to play like this, he played like this. That kind of responsibility was rare. Bojiu had always been alone. If you asked her what her values were, it would be a blur. But it was more important to protect this person. Supreme Alliance couldn't lose anymore. Perhaps after today, she might not be able to fight alongside him anymore. But no matter what, she had to ensure that nothing went wrong. Let me investigate. Bojiu glanced up at Chinemo, her eyes shining brightly like never before. Those who understood her would understand that she had made up her mind. Hoshino was in the arena too, leaning against the railing as he glanced over. Their original plan was to investigate the suspects after the competition. They immediately went to investigate the suspects that the Key Crimes Unit had identified. It was obvious that Z was in trouble. Otherwise, she wouldn't have asked to investigate in front of Chinemo. Otherwise, she wouldn't have mentioned it in front of Chinemo. Z wouldn't have done that in the past. Z wouldn't have done that in the past. She would have a perfect disguise. The moment she picked up the notebook, it would mean that she had given up a layer of disguise. Hoshino wasn't sure if Chinemo would notice anything from this incident. But for Z, it was undoubtedly an extra layer of danger. Why would Z do this? Hoshino glanced sideways. His eyelashes were long, and his eyes were filled with questions. But in the next second he smiled. Did he find something else that he wanted to protect? Just as Hoshino had this thought, he heard a voice from the other side. It was slightly deep. Give this guy a laptop. It was Chinemo. He kept his phone and looked at the youngster. 10 minutes. If I can't find anything, I will get Feng Yi to clear the area. No problem. Bojiu was naturally excited when it came to investigating. After all, under the Almighty's supervision, it had been a long time since she had the chance to break codes or attack websites. As a hacker, it was lonely to be reduced to playing games. However, can you tell me what I want to investigate first? Chinemo reached out and passed the girl's phone to her. Bojiu slid it twice, her expression serious. The brainwashing is impressive. I'm impressed. Feng, is this the time to praise him? Little Spade, wake up. Chapter 798. The horn signaling the start of the competition rang once more. Supreme Alliance's fans weren't the only ones present. There were fans from other teams as well. In such a scene, everyone was waiting for the final support. If it had been 10 years ago, esports would have been an unpopular industry. But now large-scale esports competitions were enough to attract millions of people. The large screen in the arena opened with a swoosh. Before the competition, there would always be an introduction of the investors. Everyone who came to watch the competition was looking for their corresponding seats. Anyone who had watched an esports competition before could imagine the majestic scene of a sea of people. But even in such a noisy environment, Yi Zichen could not help but laugh. There was someone who didn't seem to be affected at all. She sat in the middle of the audience, her laptop on her legs. She inserted the USB she carried with her into the port. She hadn't put on her uniform yet. That head of silver hair was too eye-catching. Without a word, Chinemo tore off his uniform and threw it over her head. This way, Even if the media rushed over, they wouldn't be able to interrupt what she was about to do. The other fans understood that time was of the essence, and they couldn't allow anyone to disturb Big Spade at this moment. They stood on the left and right, forming a protective wall. They tried their best not to come over. Most of the time, this was all they could do. Bojio's fingers moved. When she noticed the movements of the fans, she lifted her face and smiled. "Thank you." Seeing this, a little cutie was very excited. After all, they really liked Big Spade, especially when Big Spade was playing. He was so handsome. But this little cutie was a guy. Even when confessing, he had to first glance at Almighty Chin. After that, he didn't dare to confess to his idol. How awkward. Bojio didn't beat around the bush. She turned on the hotspot on her phone and connected to the laptop. Then she pushed the laptop out and said to a blushing girl, "Can you log into your account? If there is an account in the group, it will be easy to lock onto the other party's IP address." The girl nodded. When she inched closer to the youngster, her hands trembled slightly. Bojio arched a brow and reached out to hold the girl. "Don't be nervous." The girl thought to herself, "I'm not nervous, I'm excited. How can he be so handsome? His skin is so smooth and his voice is so gentle. I want to pinch him, but unfortunately, Almighty Chin is here." Chin Mo was indeed standing at the side. In order to be able to move better, Bojio's ability to search and Chin Mo's deduction. It could be said that this was a top-notch combination. Many people thought that by hiding behind the internet, they could do whatever they wanted. In fact, that was not the case. There were many ways to find someone. As long as he found the other party's IP address, he would be able to lock onto the other party's location. Even if the other party used a mobile phone to log into the account, some things had been concealed. But that wasn't a problem for her. Of course, any breakthrough would require dialogue. Bojio was a hacker. Naturally, she had her own ways to lock onto the target. First, you need a port. The moment Bojio placed her fingers on the keyboard, those who saw this scene had nothing but amazement in their eyes. Because no one could clearly see how the young man's fingers were typing, they only felt that it was a kind of cool flowing water. He didn't even use the mouse. Instead, he used the keyboard to switch windows. His eyes reflected the dialog boxes and codes that kept popping up on the screen. Hunting. Chapter 799. Her typing speed was so fast it was dazzling. The clicking sound was very rhythmic, and it was difficult to eliminate its uniqueness when mixed with the clamor of the crowd. The messages were still coming in. This was a help to Bojio since it was useful to lock down the IP address. Bojio took a moment before sending a message. But her words almost caused her to be kicked out of the group. The fans watching by the side were worried for the youngster. Even Feng Yi's mouth twitched as he watched from the side. At this moment, you sent a message in the group. "Big Spade is so handsome. Are you sure you aren't looking for AT? The people inside are disgusted by Big Spade. How can you say such things?" Feng Yi felt that it wasn't a good idea to let little Spade do this. Bojio chuckled, turning to look at Chin Mo. She was still trying to tempt her pet. "Brother Mo, can't I speak the truth in this day and age? I'm the Skybreaker. I haven't mentioned my other strengths, for example. I'm good at games, I often get the first kill and I'm good at earning money. People like me aren't easy to find." Feng Yi smirked. "Little Spade, did you know that you were trying to convince the Almighty to marry you?" With that in mind, Feng Yi glanced at Chin Mo. "What exactly did you like about this guy? Narcissism? Cut the crap. Continue working or I'll throw you out." Chin Mo didn't look at Feng Yi, instead placing his hand on the youngster's head, pressing it gently. Even though he was warning him, his thin lips were smiling. He didn't look like he was going to throw him out. It was obvious he was being sarcastic. The fans felt as though they had been stuffed with another round of dog food. Almighty Chin's boyfriend-like actions, were they really not intentional? Hoshino, who wasn't far away, saw the entire scene. His hand stilled. When he glanced up, his gaze landed on the youngster's straight back. "Z. You would rather shed a layer of skin and take the risk to fight in front of so many people. Was it because of Chin Mo?" Hoshino wasn't sure what their relationship was. But if he knew a person well, he would be able to tell from her actions. Moreover, it was Hoshino versus Z. For a hacker, especially a hacker like Z, hiding himself was more important than anything else. This was Z's most perfect work. But at this moment, Z exposed his back to the enemy. It was revealed to the most mysterious profiler in the case-solving team. What does this mean? Z, there's no way you didn't know. For you, was Chin Mo someone you would protect even if you had to go this far? Hoshino glanced at the crowd again. Chin Mo leaned forward, intentionally or unintentionally blocking the youngster's line of sight as she typed. A phone login is different from a computer login. The IP address will be disguised. Chin Mo understood the basics. After all, he had caught Z before. That's why I let them talk more. When Bojiu lifted her lips, she gave off a mischievous aura. You have to pay the price for refuting my handsomeness. With a snap, his slender fingers tapped on the enter key with a crisp sound. Other than the code on the screen, a dialog box popped up. It was the interface of the manager with a performance tab. After clicking on the resource monitor button, the IP address of the sender of the data packet would be displayed. This meant that the IP address of the person who had spoken to Bojiu alone would be locked down. When these things appeared, the fans were stunned once again. They couldn't understand it, but they found it cool. Even if they couldn't understand it, they could see the IP address bar flashing. Especially when there was a reply when the youngster typed a message. With a snap, she pressed the enter key. The IP address was locked. But at this moment, it wasn't useful to just lock down the address. Time was tight. There wasn't any extra time for Bojiu to check the exact location. But right from the start, Bojiu hadn't intended to use the IP address to confirm the exact location. Instead, it was hacking. Back then, it had been the admin who had checked the group. The IP address that Bojiu had hacked was obviously the admin. So many accounts have been dropped, seriously. Bojiu arched a brow as she operated. Can't you use a little more advanced hacking? Fengyi was starting to panic. Was this the time to complain about the other party's lack of methods? Who was the one who had praised him previously? Time, little spade, time. Wait a minute, code analysis. Bojiu moved her fingers. It's coming. What was coming? This youngster had obviously dodged the loophole in the firewall and headed straight for the heart of the other party. When these things appeared on the laptop screen, they were strings of code that no one could understand. Only the pair of hands moved faster than before. When the youngster typed on the keyboard, the laptop would shake slightly. Is Big Spade hacking the other party's account? A fan asked in a low voice. The other fan shook her head. At this moment, Bojiu laughed. A real hacker would never hack an account, that's too low class. I'm planting a fun virus, it's called hacking. With that, the youngster's fingers paused. With a swoosh, a bunch of images appeared on the screen, each one different. There were only 13 people who had actually arrived at the competition venue. This is. It wasn't just the fans, even Fengyi was shocked. Phone selfie. How exactly did he do it? Everyone was looking at the youngster who was controlling the laptop, feeling as though the world had turned into a fantasy. From what they knew, who could control a phone from a distance? But they didn't know that a real hacker would be able to find the loophole as long as there was an internet connection. Launching an all-out hunt. Only Chin Mo remained as noble and indifferent as ever when he saw this scene. His eyes were deep, and he had one hand in his pocket as he swept his gaze across the venue. He looked casual, but in fact he was highly focused. In less than 3 seconds, he immediately locked onto one of them. It wasn't because of the person's appearance, but because of the way he had flung his phone. The phone didn't listen to him. That was a subconscious reaction that everyone would form. Chin Mo reached out, pressing the Bluetooth earpiece on his left ear. Upper left, 45 degrees grab. As a sniper, this wasn't the first time he had been used in such a manner. Besides, these people weren't seated in the audience, they had mixed in with the unofficial fans. In the past, he hadn't been able to make a move because he was afraid of implicating the innocent. But now he had locked onto anyone who shook his phone. It was really emotional. It seemed like a scene from a movie. At this moment, Fengyi realized something. The reason Almighty Qin didn't leave. It wasn't just to accompany the youngster. Instead, his field of vision was directly aimed at the unofficial fans' seating area. Was that why they had chosen this spot from the start? Because it was a good field of vision. Almighty Qin knew something had happened. He could understand why. But Little Spade had chosen this spot out of all places. He must have known beforehand that something was going to happen, right? Why did he suddenly feel like his intelligence was low? Shouldn't he, as the manager, have known earlier? Feng Yi glanced up, glancing towards Qin Mo and Bojio. One of them was seated while the other was standing. One of them wasn't moving while the other was giving orders through his earpiece. They had the same strong aura, but a different handsome face. With the uniform on, they looked like the commander of a Star Trek. When the two of them were together, it was an impactful scene. Only the people present could understand how it felt. No wonder some people were infatuated. They were so handsome. Not only was their coordination perfect, but they didn't waste any time in connecting. The fans who were fortunate enough to witness this scene, they were speechless. After all, they had come with the mindset of watching their idol play games. They hadn't expected to see something even cooler than the game. The images on the laptop screen disappeared one after another. The people who had flung their phones didn't know why they had been taken out of the venue. They weren't angry. They hadn't accomplished what they wanted. How could they be happy? They hadn't even released the news. They hadn't told everyone about how Spadesy had bullied their true fans. And most importantly, the manager had mentioned a piece of news. What exactly was it? They hadn't done anything yet. Why were they taken away? Not far away. The youngster pressed the enter key. Only 2 words appeared on the huge screen. Hail. All of them were hunted. The organizer watched as the people he had planted disappeared one by one. His first reaction was to call Wu Zhen. But the strange thing was that the first time he called, his phone could still get through, but no one picked up. The second time he called, his phone didn't listen to him. It turned on the camera function and took a picture of his face. At that moment, he really panicked. He kept flinging his phone, thinking that he had pressed the wrong button, and the screen was locked. He wanted to switch it off and restart. The organizer was smart. If he switched off his phone, he could indeed cut off the network control. But Almighty Qin's speed of finding people didn't give him a chance to escape. Just after he rebooted his phone, a voice suddenly rang out. The venue's security appeared in front of him. "Sir, please come with us." The organizer was smart. "I bought a ticket to watch the competition. Now that it's about to start, I have to go with you just because you asked me to? Why?" The security looked at each other and knew that he was a prick. They tried to reason with him. "Because you broke the rules, we need to verify it." Chapter 800. Hearing this, the field control narrowed his eyes. "Please cooperate with us." "I'm not leaving." Not only did that person not cooperate, but he also started to make a fuss, his voice getting louder and louder. The field control couldn't do anything, so they had to do it directly. That person really couldn't accept that the trap he had set up for so long was broken just like that. He tried his best to stir up trouble, trying to get people's attention. The field control was after all the field control. It was obvious that he was here to cause trouble. If they didn't pull him away, they wouldn't let him cause trouble. However, the field control was still very polite, so they politely asked the person to talk first. Unfortunately, the field control was polite, but that person found a loophole. Just as they were about to pull him to the exit, that person looked at the youngster and Qin Mo who were walking towards him, as well as the fans behind them. His eyes were vicious. After all, he had been doing things for so many years and had never been caught. This time, even if he was caught, he wanted to let people know what kind of person Spadesy was. Anyway, that kind of thing, as long as one fan knew, all the fans would know. What's more, there was the field control here. That person exerted strength in his fingers and changed the direction of the camera. He yelled at the fans behind the youngster. "The Spadesy you like is just a woman dressed as a man. She has never been a hunk." It was just one sentence. Even in a noisy environment, everyone near him could hear it clearly, whether it was the field control or the fans. And Feng Yi, who was at the scene, there was no way to describe their expressions. Because at that moment, there was no expression. Everyone seemed to be frozen in place. There was a moment of stagnation in time. It was as if the surrounding sound and air had been sucked away. Such a scene shouldn't have appeared in such a lively place. Because there was still a competition. 15 minutes later, the finals would begin. Swoosh. 8 screens hung in the middle of the room. Using 3D sound effects, they began to slowly descend from the ceiling. Every link was made with top-notch equipment. In a 3-dimensional form, this esports competition that was attracting the attention of the country was being broadcasted live. Adjustments were being made to each of the cameras. On the 8 big screens, there were stereo sound effects. If you went to an esports competition, you would know what kind of standard it was. Every screen had a different introduction for each team. They were the team's promotional videos. The special sound effect of entering the game was played in the promotional video. It was like a fire that could ignite the entire youth. That youth belonged to them. That kind of scene seemed to only be seen in comics. When the promotional video of Supreme Alliance came out, the fans who came to watch were all excited. They clenched the hands of the people sitting next to them in excitement, their hearts trembling uncontrollably. It was about to begin. He had been waiting for this scene for 3 years. It was about to begin. There was a group of people. From countless honors to falling to rock bottom. Then he climbed up from the bottom of the valley bit by bit. That group of people had been through too much. Now at this moment, they could finally stand up again. The defending champion in the hearts of the fans, Supreme Alliance. However, the fans didn't know. It was at the exit of the northern corner of the esports arena. The air froze for a second. Chapter 801. He was still thinking of what to say. But this time, he had just opened his mouth and before he could say anything, his kneecap was kicked in the face. That kick was ruthless. It was also very strong. With just one kick, the person was kicked out of the arena. In the safety passage, there was a circular wall. That person's back was hit, and all that was left was pain. He lifted his head, wanting to shout again. However, his chin was pinched by someone. A handsome face appeared in front of him, making him feel as if he was frozen, and his fingers were trembling. No one saw his expression clearly, but he half squatted down, and with his face tilted, he whispered softly in that person's ear. Infringement causing trouble. Do you really think no one will care about you? Feng Yi's first reaction was to grab his hair. Almighty Qin, young Master Qin. Why did he hit him? Why did he hit him in such an occasion? How many reporters were watching? And those who couldn't wait to dig up some dirt on him. Why did he hit him? The media, and Qin Mo didn't even turn back, his voice low. Then let them come at me. Let them come at me? Feng Yi was shocked. Was he trying to protect Little Spade's secret, so he didn't hesitate to make himself look bad? Feng Yi's thoughts were a mess. Just now, when he heard the news, he was so shocked he almost swallowed his fist. Little Spade was a girl. So young Master Qin wasn't gay? Or normal? No, this wasn't the time to think about this. Feng Yi took a deep breath, turning immediately. It wasn't that he didn't want to know the follow-up, but he wanted to stop the media. Brother. Feng Yi reached out, placing his hand on the shoulders of the 2 field control officers. Let's talk? After saying this, his heart wasn't calm. Because he knew that the impact of this matter couldn't be reversed. Little Spade was a girl. Once the media found out, it would be uncontrollable. Little Spade might be stripped of his status as a member. That person was clear that he was going for a life and death struggle. He knew that with Qin Mo around, he wouldn't be able to do much. Besides, Miss Wu had told him not to start from Feng Yi's side since he was too good at public relations. He had to start from the fans' side. If those who liked Spadesy retaliated, it would cause real harm. Spadesy could guarantee everyone's loyalty, but no one could. Whether it was black or white, it was just a matter of a person's thoughts. He could still remember how he had managed to convince some of the fans in the group chat. In for a penny, in for a pound, in for a pound, in for a pound. He shouted at the other fans, look, these are the people I like in you guys. They are just like this. A woman dressed as a man and one beat people up because his family is powerful. I bought a ticket to enter, and I am also a Supreme Alliance fan. Aren't you afraid of disappointing us fans by treating me like this? If that was the case, it would be too shameless. Fengyi hadn't gone far. When he heard that, he was afraid that Almighty Qin would cripple him. After all, Fengyi knew that Qin Mo had intended to sacrifice his image to protect Little Spade's secret from the moment he had kicked him. How could Bojiu not see what Fengyi could see? She had always been black. But the Almighty was different. That person, standing in the brightest place, reached out to her. She had told herself that, in this world, there was such a person. Regardless of the time, he would not allow anyone to splash dirty water on him for any purpose. Hence, how could she drag him into this just because of herself? This time, the youngster moved faster than Qin Mo. She used her arm to block his hand. Bojiu knelt down. When she lowered her head, the silver hair on the side of her forehead fell diagonally, adding a layer to her face. Even the organizer couldn't understand why the youngster had blocked Qin Mo's punch. The onlookers couldn't understand either. But at this moment, the youngster smiled, the corners of her lips lifting slightly. Her fingers wrapped around Qin Mo's fist inch by inch, looking completely carefree and handsome. Brother Mo, hitting such a person will only dirty your hands, such a person. With that, the youngster paused. Following that, he grabbed the man's wrist with his other hand and tightened his fingers. His eyes were cold and stern. I'll handle it. That person was good at complaining. Handle it? If you have the ability, tell your fans what exactly your identity is. Are they not allowed to talk about you? What the hell? I want to see how you're going to. Before he could finish his sentence, there was a loud crack. That was the sound of his wrist being broken. Pain. It was so painful that he wanted to scream. But the youngster didn't give him the chance. Her fingers moved along his wrist, grabbing onto his throat. Sir, you really don't understand me. I've never been a good person. As for what you said just now, aren't you afraid that my fans will be disappointed? Heh. What kind of fan are you? A person like you, what right do you have to touch his hands? I can't bear to carry him away. How can a dirty thing like you touch him? That was the only thing in Bojiu's eyes. She lowered her voice and said, I'll give you 1 second. Stand up and get out of my sight. If you don't, I'll crush your other wrist. That person crawled up after she released her grip. Scared witless, he crawled up and covered his arm with his fingers, as if there was a demon behind him. But he wouldn't leave. On the other side of the safe passage were the special forces that Qin Mo had planted. But the outcome wasn't important anymore. What was important were the few fans and the security. Spadesy was actually a girl. To them, this was more impactful than anything else. Fengyi knew that even if he told the media that the commotion was caused by Almighty Qin hitting someone, it wouldn't be a complete secret. Little Spade's actions meant that she had admitted to it. In fact, at this moment, why was she so stupid? If she hadn't taken action and ignored him, there would have been a chance to explain. But he couldn't, because the bright-eyed youngster in front of him was smarter than anyone else. She would know what to do and there would still be a chance to explain. But for Qin Mo, she didn't even leave a chance to explain, cutting off her own path of retreat and protecting that person's reputation. Because when the media talked about this again, they wouldn't say that Almighty Qin had hit someone. They would only say that Spadesy had broken the fan's hand after being discovered as a girl. Chapter 802. Fengyi had been a manager for so many years. He had seen too many things in the industry. Those who weren't popular wanted to use the popular ones to climb up. Everything was for the sake of benefits. At that time, he had felt that this industry was boring. Until the Supreme Alliance was formed, until he saw these two people. Fengyi wanted to ask the Almighty, were you sure Little Spade didn't like you at all? They had already reached this stage. If it wasn't called liking, what was it called? He had seen wrongly. In the past, he had always felt that the Almighty had contributed more. In reality, both of them had contributed more to each other. But this matter, Fengyi took a deep breath. Supreme Alliance had never cared about public opinion. It was because esports relied on skills and nothing else. For those who truly liked esports, as long as their idol's charisma was still there and his skills were still amazing, no one would care if the ID was a man or a woman. As long as the ID was the person behind it, and he didn't fake his skills, nothing would be a problem. But the most important thing now was Little Spade's popularity. She was the rookie king right from the start, and had a ridiculously handsome face. It was undeniable that there were some who liked Little Spade not because of her skills, but because of her face. He was afraid that the fans would think that Little Spade had lied to them. After all, Little Spade had always been a girl disguised as a man. But there was one point. To the competition management team, it didn't matter if you were male or female. As long as your ID was the original and there were no fake operations, and some private information about your personal life, if the fans didn't mind, the competition management team wouldn't use this as an excuse to kick you out. After all, what mattered here was the game's operating skills. Hence, they still had to worry about the backlash from the fans. Thinking of this, Fengyi subconsciously glanced sideways at the few people present. At this moment, the youngster stood up. She was still the same as before, dressed in a battle uniform that fluttered in the wind. She didn't look like a girl at all. Bojiu walked towards them and glanced up at the big screen that was less than 100 meters away from the safety exit. There was already a countdown of the last 10 minutes. She opened her mouth, wanting to say something. One of the fans suddenly said, "I don't care." Bojiu paused. Chapter 803. It wasn't just that one fan. Even though the others didn't say anything, their gazes were the same. They were firm, gentle, and unbreakable. That kind of feeling was like the pressure of all the dreams on one person. Since when had the youngster in front of them become their idol? Instead, he had become a stubborn hope. The screen started to count down to 5 minutes. The image changed. It was like a kaleidoscope, flying past quickly, and finally stopping at the center of the esports arena. The shoutcaster started to take his position, fiddling with the microphone and testing the audio. The youngster didn't move. Sister Turtle stood out from the group of fans, completely behaving like a domineering elder sister. Rather than feeling sorry, "Why don't you fight properly in the arena? We want a vigorous national league without any schemes. Don't tell me you can't do it." Bojiu broke into a smile, stuffing her hands into the pockets of her uniform. She smiled devilishly. "You're trying to goad me into action. Are you going to fall for it?" Sister Turtle looked at her as though she was looking at a family member. Or rather, it was as though she was looking at her past self. She didn't want this person to be destroyed. That was probably how she felt. Bojiu retracted her gaze. She felt that it was different. In the past, there had never been such a moment in her life. No matter what she faced, there had never been anyone who stood behind her and told her how to fight or fight. It was her own business to touch, crawl, and roll around. She stood there, even if there was a group of enemies in front of her. She had to solve it. Just like what her father had said. She was Z, the young lord who protected the entire hacker lineage. If she couldn't win against others, others would devour her. But now Bojiu glanced up, looking at the gaze that was directed at her. She finally understood why the Almighty loved playing esports so much. Because there was never a single person fighting here. "I'll accept your goading." Bojiu retracted her steps and turned, her uniform fluttering in the wind. She heard the youngster say, "Don't worry, I'll beat them until they call me daddy." The fans, they must have been fans of a fake Spade. Beat them until they call me daddy. How could he say something like that? She watched as the young man walked to Almighty Qin's side. There wasn't a trace of panic on her face, and she didn't seem to want to explain anything. Only her eyes were as dim as the night. Almighty Qin was even more straightforward than them. He was shocked and didn't waste any time. He just said one word, "Let's go." With the Almighty's temper, he really wouldn't say much about this kind of thing. Bojiu heaved a sigh of relief. But when the smile on his face just appeared, Qin Mo's voice floated over, his tone casual. "Let's have a good talk after the competition, young lady." "Young girl?" Bojiu choked. The Almighty was going to settle the score with her after the competition. She had thought that he would be very angry. At the very least, he should sever all ties with her. But it seemed like the Almighty didn't mean it that way. But if he said he wasn't angry, Bojiu tilted her head and glanced at his chiseled face. It didn't look like it. It could only be said that the great god's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. When she was young, she realized that her pet's thoughts were especially hard to guess. At the entrance of the arena, the entire Supreme Alliance team was waiting. The screen was already counting down to the last minute. The finals were different from the regional competition. Once the time reached 0. Chapter 804. Wuxiao still had a cigarette in his mouth. But at this moment his expression wasn't as lazy as before. Instead he narrowed his eyes, his face solemn. Or rather, every Supreme Alliance member standing there was looking at the time on the screen. Coco and Fengshang were the ones who couldn't keep their composure. But even so they didn't move, just standing there. 27. 26. 25. 2. The number 24 flashed by. At the audience seats, two slender figures suddenly supported themselves with one hand and fell from the high platform just like that. When they landed, their uniform flew up with a swoosh. Countless screams came from the audience. The fans couldn't understand how their idol had leaped past them. There was an indescribable excitement. Qin Mo didn't turn back. But no matter what the situation was, it couldn't hide his tall and straight figure and the aura he exuded. His black hair was still moving because of the inertia from jumping down from a high place. And beside him, the youngster had a head of silver hair, the tear mole at the corner of her eye slightly raised. Her lips curved into a sweet smile. The two of them had officially returned to the team. In such a unique way. Almost everyone saw the eye-catching jump. There was another reason for the fans' screams. This was a height of 3 meters, which was equivalent to the height of a one-story house. He jumped down just like that, and his landing posture was so beautiful. It was so handsome that it could make people's faces bleed. On the screen, the countdown hadn't ended yet. And all the Supreme Alliance members had successfully reunited. Qin Mo turned, standing in front of all the members, his slender and strong back like an ancient bow full of tension. His voice was calm and deep. "Let's go." These 3 words opened up the entire impactful scene. With the appearance of the 0, all the team members walked out. Some of them had smiles on their faces, some were fiddling with their wrists, and some were raising their eyes. The all-star team. They were the center of attention. Their hearts were beating. Countless cries of support rang in their ears. Supreme Alliance victory. Feng Yi stood on the stage, watching this scene. His phone didn't stop, he had to handle the follow-up work. The organizer had already been taken away by the special forces. Those fake fans who had been taken out of the arena were the biggest problem. As expected, Feng Yi hadn't even reached his position when he heard those people still raging. The source of their anger was that they felt wronged. How could they be treated like this? Feng Yi knew that he couldn't talk things out with these people. A bunch of brainwashed people. Usually, no matter what you say, they will think that they are being bullied. I used to be a Supreme Alliance fan, but now I'm turning anti-fan. Isn't this how you treat your true fans? Aren't you afraid of getting killed? Feng Yi was thoroughly enraged. Die. It's fine if you use the name of a true fan to commit crimes, but you still want to hang me up? Did he really think that he, the agent, was dead? I didn't expect everyone to hold such a huge grudge against Supreme Alliance. Feng Yi walked over. Since that's the case, go ahead and spread whatever you want. Supreme Alliance has been hung up since young. This isn't a big deal. Little Zhang, call Lawyer Li and tell him that there are more than a dozen parents here that he needs to visit. These people's infringement of Little Spade's copyright hasn't been settled yet. No matter what, Little Spade is the FC King of Supreme Alliance. Estimate the price. Ask each family for a little less, maybe 80,000 or 100,000. Those who know they're in the wrong can talk, but those who don't, fight the lawsuit to the end. Don't care if they're students or not, just ask their parents how they raised their children. Those people didn't listen to Feng Yi, looking nonchalant as they continued to shout. They wanted everyone to scold Supreme Alliance and Spadesy. To them, Feng Yi didn't even bother. It was obvious that they weren't successful in hurting him. They wanted to use public opinion to smear his name. Unfortunately, he wasn't going to give them the chance. He called the bodyguards over and sent them away. They had to leave even if they didn't want to. After that, the security staff was still puzzled. Boss Feng's methods aren't the same as usual. It wasn't just different. He didn't give them any face. Feng Yi walked over, passing each of them a cigarette. He didn't care about anything else for now. Today's competition. He had to let those youngsters continue to fight without any distractions. Because this time, Supreme Alliance's opponent wasn't easy to deal with. Grand Realm, fifth in last year's National League, had dominated the regional competition and entered this year's finals. He knew that when the variety show had been looking for people, they had also looked for their members. But they hadn't agreed to attend. This meant that it was a professional team with top-notch tactics. Supreme Alliance was up against such a team the moment they entered. He wasn't sure if they could handle it. But on further thought, this was the finals of the National League. Which team that could enter the finals was simple. In the arena, the cheers continued. Everyone seemed to have a passion that could lift the roof. The shoutcaster sitting in front of the livestream started his commentary. The livestream platform was fully online. The competition format was the same, with a total of 3 rounds. The last round was a 5v5 team battle. Just like other esports competitions, each character only had 3 chances to revive. Now let's see who will be fighting in the 1v1. The moment the shoutcaster finished his sentence, there was a loud swoosh. A row of words appeared on the screen, representing the members sent by Supreme Alliance and Grand Realm. Hey, Wang Su, the Spadesy you wanted to PK didn't come for the 1v1. It seems like he didn't see the challenge you sent him. It was the vice-captain of Grand Realm, Yan Yixiao. His left hand was placed on the back of the chair, the corners of his lips lifted. Wang Su lifted his lids, placing the towel in his hands to the side, his eyes dark and heavy. Oh, our golden newcomer is going to be angry. Yan Yixiao reached out and patted his shoulder. Go on, go for the first round. Let Supreme Alliance have a good look. Neglecting you will be their biggest mistake. Wang Su stood up. He was a man of few words and didn't have outstanding looks. His appearance didn't garner much cheers from the fans. This was Jiang City, not Grand Realm's home ground. More importantly, Wang Su was a new face. Who is that? Someone in the audience even asked such a question. Not many could answer. Supreme Alliance's representative was Yin Wuyao, the north of Yin Wuyao. The two of them walked over to their computers, putting on their headphones. Then they clicked on the mouse and entered the game. The game's music started playing. Even the shoutcaster's hair stood on end. This was the start of the finals. It seems like Yin Wuyao is going for a safe and steady battle. He has chosen a long-range attack character with high output and high attack power. Apart from assassins, it's a safe choice. The opponent has chosen a long-range attack as well. So it's time to see which side has the better long-range attack. As the commentator spoke, he asked his partner next to him. As usual, who do you think will win this match? Of course it's Yin Wuyao. The scale of the competition isn't just a test of the player's skills, but also their mental fortitude. Yin Wuyao's mental fortitude is definitely better than a newbie's. Are you saying that apart from skills, mental fortitude is also important? Of course. But based on what I know, the newbie from Grand Realm isn't simple. I heard he's good at holding his ground. I've heard of that, but according to the information, he's an assassin. Why did he choose a long-range shooter? Could he have been influenced by Yin Wuyao? Before the shoutcaster could finish his sentence, the two players were already facing each other. As players, it was only a matter of time before they clashed. But Yin Wuyao could clearly feel the unfriendly aura of the newcomer. Grand Realm's Yan Yixiao listened to the explanation and looked at the screen, the corners of his lips curling up. Was he influenced by North of Yin Mountain? It seems like they have underestimated Wang Su. In the esports industry, Spadesy isn't the only all-rounder. Grand Realm has one as well. Moreover, when he plays as an archer, his maneuvering and positioning are fatal to his enemies, especially in a 1v1 situation. Yin Wuyao, who sat in front of the computer, frowned. Even his lips seemed to have changed. He had dodged all of his opponent's big moves, but his HP had dropped. But his opponent wasn't injured at all. Yin Wuyao narrowed his eyes. He controlled his character to retreat, successfully dodging another attack. His technique was very fast, and it seemed to be perfectly executed. Perhaps the spectators couldn't tell. But only Yin Wuyao himself knew that he was being suppressed, and could not even get out of the defense tower. Bojiu sat beside Chinemo, watching Yin Wuyao's operation. Her hand that was taking a sip of water paused. Then she frowned. If Bojiu could see it, it was impossible for Chinemo not to. Yin Wuyao wasn't leaving either. Lin Feng finally reacted, pushing Yinhu. Hey, what's going on? Am I overthinking? Why do I feel as though Uncle Yin hasn't left the tower since the start? You aren't overthinking. Yinhu's eyes dimmed. He's a ruthless fellow. Ruthless fellow? Lin Feng turned to look at Yin Wuyao once again. That was when he realized that the usually carefree person was frowning and his hands were tightly knitted. Yan Yixiao lifted his lips. Based on Wang Su's style, it should be about time. No one would be able to understand what he meant just by listening to his words. But right at this moment, the screen changed. Wang Su, who had been attacking from afar, leaped from the bushes, heading straight for Yin Wuyao. Silver sparks flew. Chapter 805. The First Drop of Blood. The first kill since the start of the competition. When the music started playing, there would be a technician who would replay the scene in slow motion. It was a cool scene. But this first kill belonged to the opponent. North of Yin Wuyao's ID fell. Everyone was in a different mood. Some were cheering while others were disappointed. Supreme Alliance's fans looked at the screen, their waving banners paused. As for the fans that had always liked Uncle Yin, their expressions were blank. Supreme Alliance is in danger, the shoutcaster commented. The shoutcaster spoke up. This newcomer from Grand Realm isn't simple. Whether it's hand speed or positioning, he's better than Yin Wuyao. Lin Feng couldn't help punching the chair beside him. Feng Shang's eyes were filled with worry. Uncle Yin hadn't been in such a state since he returned to the competition. It was obvious that he wasn't a newcomer. The first kill in the national finals was very meaningful to every team. If they won the 1v1 PK, they wouldn't feel as pressured in the following matches. But if they lost, it wasn't just the others. Yin Wuyao, who was competing in the arena, had the same thought, and this thought, after he was revived, became clearer, as if it was reminding him. It was easy to see the state of the competition. This was especially true for some experienced commentators. North of Yin Wuyao's speed has changed. You're saying he's slowed down, right? That's right. That's dangerous. Hero is a game that tests hand speed and positioning. Once he hesitates, not only will he not be able to kill his opponent, he might even be killed instead. It seems like the death just now has given North of Yin Wuyao a lot of mental pressure. That's probably how people who have played on the battlefield for too long think. Why is it that once a professional team member reaches a certain age, whether it's from his overall battle state or from his mentality, they'll switch him out? It's because he's long since lost his drive. Is that what you mean? The key now is to see if North of Yin Wuyao can break free from the mental pressure. If he can't, it will be a one-man game. The two shoutcasters made sense because it was on the screen. Wang Su's in-game character charged over again. His damage hadn't decreased at all. Yin Wuyao was suppressed to the point that he didn't leave the tower at all. In less than 3 minutes, the defense tower was blasted into smithereens by a long-range artillery shell from Wang Su. Yin Wuyao controlled his character to take a step back. Bojiu frowned. Lin Feng didn't understand why Little Spade was frowning. On the other side, Wang Su increased his speed and ran from the right side, directly using a skill to aim at North of Yin Mountain's back. It was very fast. Ordinary people could only see the silver sparks created by the game character on the screen. They couldn't see how he moved at all. By the time people realized what was happening, he only saw Yin Mountain's figure fall for the second time on the screen. Wang Su ran back. At this time, his HP was also low. He had to return to the city. However, on the way back to the city, Wang Su, who was wearing earphones, flicked his finger. According to the situation just now, he should have been able to kill his opponent instantly. He didn't expect that North of Yin Mountain would still have a trick up his sleeve. However, even if his skills were good, it was useless. Chapter 806. The second time. This was the second time north of Wuxia had fallen. And the third time, regardless of whether Chung was still around, Grand Realm would be declared the winner of this match. The fans' emotions were unfathomable. The shoutcaster shook his head. I never expected this match to turn into a rookie show for Grand Realm. It seems like Supreme Alliance is still lacking in certain aspects. That's normal. The shoutcaster analyzed everything. Even though Supreme Alliance has many pros, they all have a problem. For example, north of Een Mountain. You and I both know that age has a definite effect on the speed of the opponent. This is only the first match for Supreme Alliance, and there are still 2 more matches to go. This time, Supreme Alliance has recruited 4 main players. Other than Spade Z and north of Een Mountain, the other 2 are completely new rookies. In a 5v5, it won't be easy for them. If this continues, I'm afraid they will lose the second match, and won't even have the chance to enter the team battle. North of Een Wuxiao has revived. This time, he should be able to defend for a longer period of time. The Supreme Alliance members sitting outside the arena must be in a bad mood. The livestream had to showcase their condition. With the shoutcaster's words, the camera shifted, aiming at Qin Mo's position. Unexpectedly, there wasn't much emotion on that elegant and handsome face. His long fingers pressed onto the Bluetooth earpiece on his left side. The shoutcaster was shocked. Is Qin Mo planning to use the call now? Every captain had a chance to speak to a member. This was an adjustment made in the past 2 years. But everyone knew the importance of this call. The other shoutcaster was confused. If I were Qin Mo, I wouldn't use the call here. There is a 2v2 coming up. Compared to the 1v1 that can't be salvaged, it would be more meaningful to use it in the 2v2. That is indeed the case, but he did press the earpiece. Since that is the case, pass the microphone to the stage control. Let's hear what Qin Mo has to say. The game sound was muffled. Then Qin Mo's voice came through the Bluetooth earpiece. Not only did it reach the audience's ears, it also reached Een Wuxiao's ears. Hand speed has nothing to do with age. Since you've decided to come back, why not prove it? That was it. The commentator paused. They had purposely set aside some time to listen to how Qin Mo would guide Een Wuxiao. But now this was all he said? However, the young man sitting on the bench felt that this sentence was enough. Bojo smiled faintly when she heard that. Een Wuxiao, who was wearing headphones, felt a chill run down his spine. Then he lifted his eyes and looked at the screen in front of him. The memories of the past spread from his mind to his limbs. The night he was expelled from the club, he lay on the bed and smoked. He didn't want to go anywhere. He had also told himself that he should just forget about it. He was indeed at that age. But he couldn't persuade himself. He wanted to fight again. I really can't accept that I didn't get the championship. For a professional player, not having a match to play in was more painful than anything. It's not that I haven't thought about going to other clubs, but everyone had the same idea. Chapter 807. Some of his professional friends started to distance themselves from him. Those who were close to him started to persuade him to give in. At the very least, he could still be a coach in some club. At that time, he had stood at the entrance, cigarette butts all over the floor. In the end, his fingers were numb from the cold. Someone was still laughing. Hey, isn't this Peking University? What are you here for? Are you here to play games? Don't tell me he's here to guide us? Who was the one who said that we shouldn't play the game the way we play? The focus should be on our skills. In the end, we still have to do some other messy things. Great, now the person who said those words wants to guide us. I think we should just take on the role of assistant as well. In this world, you wouldn't feel disgusted when you were wronged. Instead, people who didn't deserve to be human were humiliating what you loved the most. Een Wuxiao couldn't stand the disgust. If this was what he loved, he would rather quit. Indeed, he had never imagined that he would be standing here. Day after day, year after year, when he thought that his passion for esports had been buried, he suddenly felt a sense of loss. That youngster had appeared, and he had finally reached this place. How could he give up so easily? Een Wuxiao's left hand was on the keyboard, his right hand moving the mouse. The game didn't seem to have changed. The shoutcaster didn't think there was anything to see. It seems like Qin Mo has really wasted a chance to speak. North of Yin Wuyao's strategy hasn't changed. If this continues, his HP will be depleted and he will be hit in one move. The moment he finished speaking, Wang Su's first skill was to deal damage, and the second was to push forward. Yin Wuyao's HP was low. He wanted to take another kill. It's over, North of Yin Wuyao is going to die. It wasn't just the shoutcaster's first reaction, it was everyone's. Those who had been with Yin Wuyao from the start couldn't bear to watch the last scene. Some even closed their eyes. However, the next second, Wang Su's expression changed. The enemy in front of him had disappeared. How could a person disappear for no reason? He wasn't an assassin. The only explanation was that it wasn't that the other party had disappeared, but that there was a blind spot in his vision. Not everyone could do that. Only people who played online games all year round would play like this. If he dove into the bushes to avoid the other party's skill attacks and then turned around, he would be able to create a certain degree of visual concealment. Everything happened too fast. It was so fast that Wang Su wanted to aim the cannon at the bushes. North of Yin Mountain turned his head and used a stun shot. Then he spun around and fired in a circle. Not only did he avoid Wang Su's last bullet, he also raised his bow at the last step. Oh, this kind of operation speed was too fast. The audience only knew that someone had died when they heard the sound effect. But who would fall would only be known in the next second. The fans really thought that it was Yin Wuyao who had fallen. Even his hands drooped down. But in the next second, they realized that the person was still there. All it did was jump out from the bushes. The fans with their eyes open let out a wave of screams. When the fans opened their eyes, they were dumbfounded. Looking at the display on the screen, they pulled their friends over and asked, "What happened? What happened just now? My Peking University is not dead?" Ha 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 ha, Peking University didn't die. Although the friend's eyes were open, he didn't see anything clearly. He rubbed himself. Let me organize it. I don't know why he was the last one to die. Besides the professional players who participated in the National League, no one else could see what had happened. Even Feng Shang, a prospective player, could only see 80% of it. Uncle, how did he do it? How did he counterattack? Lin Feng turned his head and thought for a moment. Let me organize my words. Feng Shang. So you don't know either, right? Coco hugged the rabbit and lectured Feng Shang. Just cheer now, it's too tiring for you to speak. Feng Shang said. I just want to know the reason. Why wasn't the shoutcaster giving him an explanation? Visual blind spot. Bojio supported the side of her face with one hand. Her sitting posture was indeed different from the other members. It was too lazy, her elbows resting on her legs as she leaned forward. There weren't many people like her, but her eyes were filled with malice because of the black ring on her index finger. There's a type of maneuver, as long as you make use of the bushes, you will be able to create a visual blind spot against a long-range attacker. You can dodge the opponent's attack before continuing. That way, you will have a higher chance of winning. It tests the player's control and maneuver. A newbie wouldn't be able to do it, but Uncle would be able to. He's experienced and would definitely have a move that we don't know. Lin Feng pointed at the youngster. That's what I meant. It wasn't as if Grand Realms members couldn't hear their conversation. They wanted to ask Spadesy now. Did he include himself when he said a move that we don't know? Obviously not, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to analyze it so clearly. Yan Yixiao's eyes dimmed as he watched the massacre on the screen. He could sense that the revived Wang Su was starting to get serious. He had never been so serious before. It could be seen from the moment he moved the mouse. But even so, Yin Wuyao didn't let down his aura. The two of them clashed once more, each attacking with a flick. The silver sparks formed from the collision seemed to take up the entire screen. It wasn't just one person's move. It was two people, each of them quick and direct, using the most direct method to whittle down the other's HP. They retreated at the fastest speed, then counterattacked and moved again. Every movement was executed perfectly. The clicking of the mouse and the rhythmic clicking sound filled the entire arena. It filled the entire arena. On the screen, every time the two characters clashed, there would be a special effect. The silver sparks were dazzling. Their moves and maneuvers were beautiful and direct. It was rare to see them. From that moment on, the fans from both sides only had one word in mind: evenly matched. The battle lasted for a full 7 minutes. 7 minutes brought unparalleled visual enjoyment to everyone. After all, it was a battle between experts. It was exhilarating to watch. At the same time, everyone's hearts tightened. They were afraid north of Wuxia would die. However, at this moment he spun a wheel and turned around. Swoosh. Wuxia retreated a step too slow. His speed was reduced and he was shot again, losing his second life. Chapter 808. It wasn't just the audience. Even the two shoutcasters in the middle had a slight change in expression. For an ordinary player, after dying twice, his willpower had basically been destroyed, and it would definitely become a one-man show for the other party. But North of Mountain was actually able to tie the score under such heavy pressure? The shock in the shoutcasters' eyes was real. It had been too many years since they had seen such a match. It could be said that with the increasing benefits, the shoutcasters were in awe. Even a professional player would have to consider many things. Not to mention, after being killed twice, he was able to counterattack. Such a match that didn't care about retreat was something that could only be seen during the early days of esports. The shoutcasters were aware of Wuxia's ability to play such a match. Firstly, it was because of his personal experience. Secondly, it was because he had the backing of Supreme Alliance. It wasn't any other team, it was Supreme Alliance. However, no one felt it as deeply as Wuxia. He was the opponent, and he even asked himself if he was the one who had been killed twice. Would he still be like North of Mountain, unafraid of the road ahead? It seemed so difficult. In the past, Wuxia had felt that Spadesy had underestimated him because he hadn't fought against him. But now, it was a different feeling. That was because his opponent was someone worthy of his respect and battle against. Wuxia looked up and glanced at the big screen. When he revived, he clasped his right hand and dashed out of the city center. His eyes were burning with flames. Wuxia was well aware of the state his teammates were in. He was so focused that he didn't even react when his teammates called out his name. A shoutcaster was needed at this moment. The tempo of the match is changing. That's right. Right now, it's unknown who will win or lose. I have a feeling that this is going to be a very long battle. On the screen, the two of them started clashing again. Everyone's retreat, advance, and attacks were meticulous. In the National League, it wasn't like normal players, where the attacks were focused on the top, middle, and bottom lanes. The experts would choose to fight in the wilderness, because the wilderness terrain was more conducive to skillful maneuvering. As a spectator, Hoshino was also watching the match. When her gaze landed on the young man, she turned away. He was also holding a cup of coffee in his hand. Sometimes this kind of thing was a good prop. But after watching such a match, he roughly understood why Z said that everything would have to wait until the end of the match before deciding anything. This was a match worth looking forward to. Whether it was Supreme Alliance or Grand Realm, they could only see esports skills here. Wuxia's HP is dropping. The commentator couldn't hide his excitement. Could it be that the rhythm of this match is going to be led by North of Mountain? Everyone has already died twice. No matter who dies again, this match will be over. But looking at the current situation, it's Ian. The commentator had not finished his sentence. On the screen, Wuxia's character was like an arrow that had been pulled back from a bow. With a rebound, the cannon fell and North of Mountain's health dropped to critical. Then he moved his finger forward. A loud bang resounded. The two of them unleashed their ultimate skills at almost the same time. The game's sound effects rang in his ears. The screen was filled with fireworks. Who was the one that died? That was the question on everyone's mind. The dazzling maneuvers brought about a flash of white on the screen, until the screen changed, breaking down the movements. The audience finally saw Wuxia, who was covered in blood, standing by the bushes. The system made the decision automatically. In less than a second, Supreme Alliance's screen dimmed. Following the shattering of the crystal, the word failure floated up, cold and glaring. He lost. The fans' fingers fell, their eyes glued to the screen for a long time. It was just that this match was indeed different from the rest. It was rare for fans of the opposing team to clap for the opposing team. The fans of Grand Realm exclaimed, "North of Een Mountain is so handsome." A wave of applause erupted. It wasn't just for Wuxia, it was also for Een Mountain, who had allowed them to witness such an exciting match. In that moment, nothing else could be heard other than the applause. Een Wuxiao glanced up, removing his earpiece, his black hair brushing past his eyes. No one wanted to lose, neither did he. Just a little bit, yes, just a little bit. Wuxia didn't stand up. Yin Yixiao frowned. The camera started to move towards Wuxia, and only then did they realize that his hand that was holding the phone was a little stiff. Everyone saw the scene. The shoutcaster couldn't help but ask, "Muscle retardation?" "I think so." As expected of north of the Een Mountain. During the fight, he was able to incite his opponent to execute the same killing move. If this match continues, perhaps the loser will. The commentator didn't finish the name, but everyone understood at this point. Even Wuxia himself was very clear about it. The shock in his eyes began to gradually recover. Then he swung his right hand, stood up, and walked in front of north of Een Mountain. His eyes were deep. "I hope there will be a chance for you to compete with me again in the future." Een Wuxiao arched a brow. He wanted to smoke, but he was stopped by someone who wasn't his teammate. There was no reply. Wuxia frowned, trying to think of an excuse. "I like you a lot, Een Wuxiao." No, Een Wuxiao's reaction wasn't important at this moment. What was important was that the spectators were dumbfounded. The shoutcaster didn't know how to continue the conversation. Lin Feng exclaimed in shock, "F***CK. Bojiu paused in the middle of unwrapping her lollipop. To make sure she hadn't heard wrongly, she grabbed the Almighty's hand and rubbed her ears. Feng Shang was even more direct. He wasn't stuttering. "F***CK, what's this confessing to uncle?" Een Wuxiao was the one being confessed to. He wanted to turn back and shout, "Uncle is a straight man." Wait a minute, calm down. How could he be calculative with a kid? Besides, the kid had beaten him. Een Wuxiao sucked in a deep breath and was about to speak. Just then Wuxia spoke again. "I said I like your technique." Lin Feng immediately became impure. The gloominess from losing the match swept away. He was unrestrained. Hey, what technique? What do you think?" Yin Hu pressed his hand on the restless person's thigh. Lin Feng stilled, immediately keeping his voice down. He was about to touch his brother's wrist. F***CK, he was touching his thigh in front of everyone. He really didn't have any guts. "Uncle lost, it's up to us now, 2v2. Yin Hu turned, lowering his voice beside Lin Feng's ear. "Do you think I'll still be in the mood to compete if you pry my hand off now?" Lin Feng glared at Yin Hu, the word "go to hell" rolling around his throat. But it was obvious he couldn't say it now. "Why are you so impulsive now? Aren't you in the mood to compete?" Why did he keep using this move to threaten him? F***CK. Yin Hu replied calmly. "I'm afraid of being rejected. I have a fragile heart." Lin Feng. He really couldn't communicate. F***CK, he was too shameless. The match was over. Wuxia wasn't done. His chiseled face was still looking at Een Wuxiao. "What do I have to do for you to agree? To show my sincerity, after this competition, I can join your team. That way, we can all train together." Een Wuxiao. No, what was going on? Was he going to leave with him? Yin Yixiao knew his teammate well. He charged forward, not caring if he would embarrass himself, pulling Wuxia back with all his might. Een Wuxiao didn't know how to express his emotions after losing the match. After all, the other party was looking at him with a hint of reluctance. He had to return to the team no matter what. The shoutcaster was dumbfounded, his words extremely awkward. He, our contestant Wuxia is really passionate. This should be his pursuit of esports. The northern fans weren't listening. They felt that Wuxia was interested in their uncle. That gaze, it was really hard to explain. Een Wuxiao's scalp stiffened under that gaze. Especially when he walked over to his teammate, wanting to bear the consequences of losing the match. The youngster smiled brightly at him. "Not bad. Uncle went out for a match and managed to recruit someone who wants to marry into his family." Marry into his family? Yin Wuyao didn't know what expression to put on. Who exactly taught his vice-captain Mandarin? Don't use adjectives if you don't know how to use them. Wang Su is not bad. Our team is lacking someone like him. Lin Feng said, his claws already reaching out. Brother Yao, why don't you sacrifice your body? Yin Wuyao raised his head and sighed. Not wanting to speak, he wanted to smoke a cigarette to calm himself down. However, his heart was indeed soft. He still remembered the last match he had played in his previous team. It was a team battle. Due to the needs of the team, he had to give up his best long-range attack to operate a tank. During the battle, his teammates would run back the moment they saw his HP drop. They couldn't fight at all. They had lost that match badly. Those who played the game knew that it was because their damage output couldn't keep up. But the club didn't seem to think that way. They had long prepared to kick him out of the team. That time, they had found an excuse, saying that his maneuvering had dragged down the standards of the entire team, forcing him to leave the club. Yin Wuyao couldn't remember how he had felt then. In this world, it wasn't a big deal for people who hated you to trample on you. The most disappointing thing was when those who said they would conquer the world together abandoned you. Yin Wuyao glanced up, watching the youngsters who were teasing him. The captain in the middle raised his hand, tossing him a cigarette with an indifferent expression. He felt that joining the Supreme Alliance and having such a group of brothers was the luckiest thing that had happened to him in his life. This situation was also seen by the audience. The more extraordinary the solemnity, the more they felt that it was a match worth anticipating. The music for the 2v2 started. Lin Feng retracted his hand, his lips curling up. Let's go, we're going to take revenge for Brother Yao. When Yin Hu heard this, he stood up as well. His tall figure and his face appeared on the big screen, causing a wave of cheers. Especially when Lin Feng and Yin Hu went up together. They were in the same uniform but had different styles. One of them had his sleeves rolled up while the other had one hand in his pocket. Not only were they handsome, but when Lin Feng tilted his head towards Yin Hu, there was a rush of pink. In the words of the fans, it was a perfect match. The shoutcaster moved the microphone over. The second match is about to begin, but I'm sure the audience can see the current situation. Supreme Alliance has lost, which means that the 2v2 is the crux of the competition. If Lin Feng and Yin Hu don't win, the competition will end. Let's wait and see what the outcome will be. The opposing team has entered. The other shoutcaster shifted his gaze. It's the golden duo of Grand Realm. It seems like this match is going to be crucial. Which team do you think has a higher chance of winning? Brother, it's hard to say, they are evenly matched. But there is something that I think can be discussed. If Supreme Alliance sends Lin Feng and Yin Hu out, there will definitely be two newbies in the team battle. That way, even if Supreme Alliance wins, it won't be easy for them to win the 5v5. More importantly, the loss in the first match will definitely put pressure on the Feng-Yin duo. I think we should listen to the players' thoughts. Lin Feng. Lin Feng put on his earpiece, pressing it with one hand. You have a future. This is the Feng-Yin duo. They know to put my name first. That's right, I'm the attacker. The shoutcaster. That wasn't what they were asking. The fans replied in unison. That's right. Anyway, anyone who claimed to be the attacker was the one on the receiving end. The two shoutcasters felt that they would never be able to reach Supreme Alliance's point. Without further ado, they entered the game page. When the hot-blooded music started playing again, everyone's attention was focused. Bojio watched as Lin Feng moved the mouse, her brows arched in amusement. Why does it seem like Senior Lin is on steroids today? Is he playing with his life? Steroids? Coco didn't understand. He doesn't seem any different from before, hasn't he always been like this? Bojio tapped her knees rhythmically. It's different this time. His typing speed is less than a second faster than usual. Other than Wang Su, who was still watching Yin Wuyao, the rest of the Grand Realm members turned towards the youngster. You were able to see the difference in less than a second, you pervert. Lin Feng was indeed faster than before. He had to be. Chapter 809. He was a straight man. How could he understand? He couldn't lose. It would be an insult to him if he lost. They could fight on the bed if they had the guts. He might not be the one at the bottom. The more Lin Feng thought about it, the more enraged he became. He lifted the cannon and charged forward. Just as Bojio had said, his movements were much faster. Moreover, Lin Feng's character could jump, hence his movements were smooth and fluid. Lin Feng moved. After collecting the troops, he jumped to the right, taking a boss in the wilderness before returning to kill the troops. His movements and speed had changed the moment the camera caught him. As mentioned previously, a battle between experts wouldn't take place on the main road. Instead, it would take place in the wilderness. The two members of Grand Realm glanced at each other. They circled around, prepared to attack Lin Feng. After all, Yunhu wasn't with him. The two of them skimmed across the grass swiftly, their long fingers moving left and right. They were both national-level players, their movements and maneuvering beautiful. In an ordinary game, any one of these almighties would be able to control the rhythm of the entire team. But this was the National League. None of them were weak. When Lin Feng switched his view, he saw the two figures charging towards him. He retreated into the bushes and aimed his cannon at one of the players with low HP. With a loud bang, he fired towards the person nearing him. The opponent used a big move, causing Lin Feng's HP to drop by half. But he didn't leave. Instead, he swayed to the left and jumped back, his fingers moving swiftly. The opponent wasn't having it easy either, frowning from the barrage of attacks. The live feed was fast with dazzling special effects. But even so, the shoutcasters were shocked. What's going on? Lin Feng's attack is so strong, they haven't even developed? Feng Shang was impressed. If he had been alone, he wouldn't have dared to take on the two of them. Hand speed, Bojio said. Feng Shang was confused. Bojio wasn't bothered, the Almighty was right beside her. She placed her fingertips on his wrist, her index finger tapping twice, gesturing for him to pay attention to Lin Feng's mouse movements. If Feng Shang hadn't seen it, he wouldn't have known. When he looked, he suddenly realized that the number of clicks seemed to have increased a lot. The difference between 1 strike and 3 strikes. This was the significance of hand speed. The higher the number of clicks, the higher the damage. Feng Shang finally understood. However, there was one thing he didn't tell his idol. When Almighty Qin saw his idol knock his wrist, his usually good-looking eyebrows raised, and there was an indescribable danger in his deep eyes. Speaking of which, idols were just like that. Of all the people he could have knocked on to demonstrate, he had to knock on Almighty Qin's wrist. This was no different from plucking the fur from a tiger's tail. Bojio didn't notice. After all, other than the competition, she would glance towards a certain corner of the audience. Such a signal was to bide their time. Hoshino understood immediately. He picked up the coffee and put it to his lips, tapping his fingers on the cup. He knocked 5 times in a row. It wasn't very fast, but it was very rhythmic. This was a common body language used in the industry. It meant that after the competition, there would be 5 minutes. Chapter 8:10. Once the competition ended, she only had 5 minutes to leave. There were some matters that she had to settle. Bojio had thought of many reasons to leave, but she hadn't expected it to be this. The backlash from the fans. Instead of letting the Almighty and Supreme Alliance bear the brunt of the blame, it would be better for her to end it. She would be the one to end the matters outside of the competition, be it the crime squad's case, or the impure fans turning against her. Bojio knew that they wouldn't let her go, because she didn't fulfill their wishes, because they didn't need to protect anything. They would only use their love as an excuse to take someone else's belongings. After being warned, they would throw a bucket of dirty water at them and still feel wronged. Even with Fengyi around, there wouldn't be no trouble since no one would be able to stop their mouth from distorting the truth. They didn't care about the National League that gathered so many people. But Bojio cared. The more she cared about something, the more she wanted to protect it even if she knew it would lead her to the abyss. The battle on the screen continued. It was 1 against 2. Lin Feng's hands were fast, but it wasn't enough. The other person rushed over. Lin Feng was obviously at a disadvantage. The fans bolted up, their fingers clenched tightly as they called out, "Almighty Lin." If this continued, Lin Feng would definitely be killed. That was the first thought in everyone's mind. They wanted to tell Lin Feng to run. However, the fans and the members of Grand Realm had forgotten one thing. That was Yin Hu. Of course, Grand Realm reacted faster than the fans. They knew Yin Hu would definitely rush over. But they believed they could take Lin Feng's head. There was still time for him to retreat quickly after that. The time difference wasn't wrong. But just as Lin Feng was 1 HP away from dying, he leaped from the left to the right. He leaped from the far left to the far right. Not only did he eat the HP bags under the defense tower, but he also fired a long-range cannon at them. Not good. One of them couldn't help but shout, "Retreat!" He could still retreat. But his teammate, it was too late. Yin Hu leaped out from the wilderness, using a big move to attack. Kill. First HP, first kill. But that wasn't the end. Yin Hu took the opportunity to move up. It wasn't too difficult to catch up to someone with less than half of his HP. That person jumped into the bushes, and after dodging the attack, he wanted to return to the tower. Yin Hu didn't give him the chance. He forced his way into the tower and did a double kill. Under the enemy's tower, his HP was bound to drop. Yin Hu used the skill that was meant to kill. He straightened his spear and pulled it back, returning to the city with low HP. This round of fighting was very fast. A second ago, the audience was still worried that Lin Feng would be insta-killed. The next second, the sound effect of Yin Hu's double kill could be heard. Of course, Lin Feng was the reason why he was able to do this. Jumping back to the tower to eat the HP pack was especially crucial. If he hadn't moved so quickly, Lin Feng would have died in the bushes and Yin Hu wouldn't have been able to get the double kill so easily. Therefore, it could be said that their cooperation was on point. Be it Lin Feng's maneuver, the timing of Yin Hu's appearance, or the final tower kill, the audience widened their eyes in shock. What followed was a wave of cheers. Yan Yixiao's expression changed. He tapped his fingers, his gaze lowered. As expected, the two from Supreme Alliance are really good when they work together. Wang Su didn't look. He only had eyes for Yin Wuyao, who had fought against him in the previous match. Yan Yixiao hurriedly blocked him. Focus on our team. Don't worry, based on my relationship with Uncle Yin, I can arrange a meal for you. Wang Su glanced at him. He wasn't interested and continued to watch Yin Wuyao. When Uncle Yin tilted his head to light his cigarette, he felt that something was amiss. Yan Yixiao couldn't control his ace rookie anymore. He could only reach out his hand and open his communicator. Lin Feng's hand speed is much faster than before. One of you, approach him while the other advances. Knock him out. In short, their strategy was targeted at Lin Feng. Grand Realm's team composition was clear as well. Out of the two Supreme Alliance members, Yin Hu was stronger than Lin Feng. Once again, they moved to intercept him. One of them was very close while the other hid in the bushes to catch Lin Feng. Unexpectedly, Lin Feng jumped once before rebounding, blasting the crystal tower with his cannon. After destroying the tower, he retreated swiftly, leaving no chance for an ambush. This wasn't the Lin Feng they knew. Up until this point in the competition, everyone who participated in the National League would understand their opponent's tactics and habits to a certain extent. Lin Feng hadn't been like this in the past. Did you try to catch Daddy but didn't manage to? Lin Feng swept his fingers, creating a soldier. He didn't forget to gloat. Do you think Daddy is the type to jump into a hole you dig? Coco was conflicted. He was in the past. He must have been enlightened by Almighty Yun's words and actions before the start of the competition. Bo Jiu replied nonchalantly. But she didn't know that her words were the key to a certain someone's enlightenment. After all, Lin Feng had planned it himself. He was such a domineering person. How could he lower himself to his brother's level? What if he lost and that guy really pulled him into bed? He hadn't forgotten that Yin Hu didn't look fat, but once he took off his clothes, he would be able to see his abs. It was despicable to bully a pretty boy without abs like him. Lin Feng felt that he might as well win in the game, so that he wouldn't have to worry about that. What the F***ck? He didn't want to waste time talking, just one word, fight. Lin Feng's murderous aura came out of nowhere. Grand Realms members who were hiding in the bushes didn't understand what was going on. The shoutcaster commented, Seems like Lin Feng is in good form today. Indeed. The other shoutcaster nodded in agreement. It's not just their hand speed. Their mental fortitude has improved as well. It looks like the outcome of the last match didn't affect the Feng Yin duo at all. Grand Realm will have to take it seriously. Otherwise, it'll be easy for them to lose their rhythm. Grand Realm's members understood this logic. They changed their strategy swiftly, heading towards the crystal tower from the left and right. The faster they moved, the harder it was for Lin Feng's cannon to hit them. This time, their speed and positioning were much faster. But the difference in a battle between experts was usually just a hair's breadth. Even though Lin Feng had died in the second clash, the opponent had also lost a member. That wasn't all. Yun Hu had made use of the time difference to destroy 2 defense towers at the bottom lane. It was obvious who would emerge victorious in this 2v2. But even so, Grand Realm wasn't easy to deal with. Because there wasn't such a thing as retreat in their dictionary. After the two of them twisted into a rope, they counterattacked and the target was Yun Hu. The competition intensified. This kind of back and forth dragged on for a very long time. In the end, Lin Feng aimed a long-range cannon at the enemy member who had died twice. There was a loud boom. The game's music blared. A portion of Grand Realm's screen turned gray. After 3 deaths, the contestants were automatically eliminated. This also meant that the game had become a 2v1. The fangirls couldn't help but cheer. Yun Hu and Lin Feng didn't stop, aiming their attacks at the defense tower as they charged into the city. Grand Realm was left with 1 member, and it wasn't easy for them to leave the city. The moment they did, they would be attacked by Lin Feng's cannon. If they didn't, they would only be able to watch as the city fell. Speaking of which, this person was also very powerful. He had defended 3 waves of troops. But no matter how impressive he was, he couldn't withstand Lin Feng's stubbornness. Until the 4th line, he couldn't hold on any longer. When the crystal shattered, he removed his earpiece and heaved a sigh of relief. The atmosphere froze for a second, followed by an uncontrollable frenzy. We won. Supreme Alliance won. Ah, why do I find Grand Realm's members so handsome? Everyone is handsome. It's the cutest Feng Yin CP. Especially Feng Yin. He seems to be off track today. Actually, he wasn't off track. Yun Hu glanced over, his fingers brushing past the black earpiece on his left ear. He knew better than anyone else how much effort and time a certain someone had put into this match. She was obviously a lazier person than anyone else. Even if she had a little bit of time, she would want to rest for a while. However, she did not sleep early for 3 days in a row. She dragged him along and tried again and again to find ways to improve her hand speed and coordination in a short period of time. As a certain someone charged forward, he would advise himself to calm down in case it was a trap. Regardless of what he did, the innocent and sweet someone always made people laugh. It was the same now. After Yun Hu removed his earpiece, the first thing he did was to hug Lin Feng, who was still whistling at the crowd. They were brothers after all. They had been together for so many years. The joy of success had to be shared. Lin Feng hugged him back instinctively. The moment he hugged him, he felt something was amiss. Immediately, they separated. He raised his gaze as high as he could and glanced over at Yun Hu. What he meant was, today's competition is over. Try threatening me again. Yun Hu lowered his lids, breaking into a smile. He leaned over. You seem so happy with your victory. Shall we celebrate in bed? Lin Feng was dumbfounded. F***ck, it was fine if he lost, but now he was talking about it in bed after winning. He looked like he really believed him. Yun Hu couldn't help but reach out and caress his head. He smiled happily. Lin Feng stilled. It had been a long time since he saw Yun Hu smile like this. He seemed to be calm every day. Actually, there were times when he didn't know what he was thinking. Forget it. He had won anyway. As for the rest, they were nothing. Lin Feng smiled, revealing his snow-white teeth. He walked towards the youngster, stretching out his right hand. Chapter 8:11. That kind of scene made the audience burst into another wave of jubilation. This time, the cheers were much more intense than before. Some people could not help but clench the clothes in front of their chests. Their eyes were filled with excitement and excitement. Because right now they couldn't help but think of the same name, Spadesy. After the 2v2, it's time for the team battle. The shoutcaster adjusted the microphone. I believe the audience is just like me, anticipating someone's appearance. That's right, other than Chinemo, there's another person who has dominated the esports scene this year. Spadesy, the FC King from Zone C. Let's see what kind of excitement he will bring us today. The other person laughed. Brother, I know you're a fan of Spadesy, but this is a team battle. Don't forget that Grand Realm has sent out their strongest lineup. Even with Chinemo and Spadesy, it won't be safe. There are still newbies in Supreme Alliance. This 5v5 will be a tough fight for them. I forgot about this prerequisite. The commentator slapped his forehead lightly. His partner analyzed the data. Besides, I believe Grand Realm has realized that even though no one has been able to escape from Chinmo's 3000 knife cutting, in order to execute the 3000 knife cutting, the members can't be too weak. Otherwise, it would be difficult for Chinemo no matter how good he is at fighting. Isn't there still Spadesy? One person isn't enough, there has to be at least two. Coco is fine, but as you can see, Coco's skills have deteriorated over the past year. This is a bottleneck that every professional player will face. Why did the club organize a newcomer competition before the start of the competition? It was because Fengyi noticed that the overall standard of the Supreme Alliance was declining, and they needed fresh blood. It could only be said that Spadesy came at the wrong time. If he had appeared a year earlier, Coco would still be at his peak, and this competition wouldn't have been so difficult. Look, Grand Realm has already made adjustments to their lineup in response to Supreme Alliance's problems. Yan Yixiao has always been a good strategist, so Supreme Alliance's response is crucial. Yan Yixiao stood up after hearing the shoutcaster's words. He glanced at the four people behind him. Let's go with the original plan. Grand Realm's members all had average looks, but their skills were obvious to all. Actually, it was simple. In this round, as long as they suppressed Almighty Qin, and took a few more Supreme Alliance newbies' heads, Spadesy and the others could work together to deal with them. In terms of strategy, Grand Realm was not wrong. No matter which team faced the Supreme Alliance, as long as it was a team battle, they would look for Yao Yao and Fengshang first. Honestly, those who hadn't followed Supreme Alliance's battles didn't recognize them at all. It was inevitable that there would be discussions. Newbie. A FC King like Spadesy? I don't think so. You heard what the shoutcaster said. They are just ordinary newbies. Using rookies for the team battle. Supreme Alliance probably had no choice but to use rookies for the team battle. The first match for the 1v1 was Beta, and the 2v2 was the Fengyun duo. Come to think of it, this isn't Supreme Alliance's strongest lineup. Let's wait and see, as long as they don't drag us down. Fengshang and Yao Yao heard the comments. In reality, it was normal. They had started out in the wilderness and weren't considered the best in Supreme Alliance. What the audience said could be considered objective. Shui Yaoyao had to face harsher words every day. Fat, ugly, and poor. Just when she had thought she would spend the rest of her life like this, that person had brought her out. She loved gaming and wanted to play more. It was because the people who were fighting alongside him were more important than the game itself. There had to be something in this world that could burn up all your blood and sweat. It wasn't just her. Fengshang was the same. This battle, they had prepared for a long time. Training at the internet cafe every night. Watching countless videos of the game. Whenever they encountered something they didn't understand, they would dig the uncle out from the bed filled with the smell of cigarettes. The three of them would discuss it together. Both Fengshang and the uncle were nice to her. They said she was a girl, and it wasn't convenient for her to be in the internet cafe. They specially left her a storeroom upstairs and placed a sofa for her to rest on. In just a few days, the uncle didn't forget to prepare fruits and green tea for her in the storeroom. After gaming, she still had to do her test papers. After all, she was a high school student. In the uncle's words, when he was in school he wasn't cultured. He couldn't let games harm her generation. Shui Yaoyao wanted to laugh. But she was older than them by 11 or 12 years. That was indeed a generation gap. But even so, Shui Yaoyao couldn't forget these few days. After the training, she had to do her test papers. She was so tired that she laid on the study table. When she woke up the next day, the uncle was open for business. After the overnight customers left, he made a bowl of instant noodles for each of them. Fengshang was a young master born with a golden spoon in his mouth. Everyone in Jiang City knew how rich the Feng family was. But that person didn't mind. He slurped the noodles and grabbed his hair. His handsome face was full of sweat. For these bowls of noodles, we also have to win. Then, when the time comes, let me carry you. Shui Yaoyao tilted her head and glanced at Fengshang, who was sitting beside her. The battle was finally here. It wasn't easy to win. She couldn't retreat. Swoosh. The screen flashed. The members of Supreme Alliance stood up in unison. Boju stuffed a hand into her pocket. She was still as eye-catching as ever. Moreover, Qin Mo was standing at the front. He didn't seem to hear the shoutcaster's words. His chiseled and handsome face exuded a unique aura of abstinence. The moment he glanced up, his fans were excited. Boju arched a brow. As expected of an almighty, the effect of his good looks was obvious. Then he heard a voice by his ear. The speaker's tone was very calm. You've been looking at the audience area since just now. What are you looking at? Boju's fingers paused. Her smile didn't change. I'm looking at the passion of the audience. Qin Mo tilted his head and glanced at her. Boju's lips curved upwards. She didn't avoid his deep gaze. Qin Mo retracted his gaze and didn't say anything else. He held onto her wrist and walked towards the arena. He probably didn't see Hoshino. Boju had a plan, but she knew she had to be more careful when she moved. After all, the Almighty's observation skills were too sharp. Boju lowered her head and glanced at the hand holding onto her wrist. Her lips curved upwards. That scene was clearly seen by all the fangirls present. Why does it feel like my big spade's mood has improved? I can only say that my big spade is too loyal, smiling so handsomely after being touched by the Almighty. This candy caught me off guard. Take a picture. Hurry up and take a picture. Under the camera, all the team members were sitting in their seats in a row. Supreme Alliance's uniform was the most eye-catching, not to mention the entire team's attractiveness. The audience wasn't just passionate. It was as though they were witnessing the climax of the competition. Their cheers were loud enough to tear the roof off. The number of visits on the platform displayed in the broadcasting room soared to the peak. It was obvious who it was. The most valuable esports player and the most popular FC king. It was enough to create a wave of topics. With the two of them competing, it seemed as though it would always be like this. The trend of the All-Stars couldn't be stopped. Strictly speaking, this was the first time they were playing together since the National League. Hence, it was inevitable that everyone would be excited. Swoosh. The music started playing. She tilted her head, put on her earphones and placed her fingers on the keyboard. The five of them entered the game together. It was the same for Grand Realm. The entire arena was displayed on the huge screen at the same time. The shoutcaster watched the scene. Honestly, Supreme Alliance's progress has exceeded my expectations. I'm sure everyone still remembers when they started the competition. Someone predicted on their official Weibo that they wouldn't be able to make it to the National League. For such a team, their captain is missing, their fighting ability has declined, and now, they are eliminated in the semifinals. Every single time, I felt that this was the team's limit. Who would have thought? The shoutcaster broke into a smile. This is the charm of esports. That's right, we won't know the winner until a real match. While they were talking on the screen, the players' characters had already loaded up to 90%, and the details of each character's information were displayed. Spadesy chose the assassin. He can control the tempo as an assassin. It isn't a surprise. Wait a minute, Qin Mo didn't choose the team control. The other shoutcaster leaned towards the screen, his eyes widening. It really isn't the team control. Why did he choose the assassin? The formation doesn't match. Perhaps it's to protect the newbies. Choosing the assassin as a tank is fine. That could be said, but the National League wasn't an ordinary online game. It would be risky to choose such a character. Yan Yixiao seemed to have expected this change. He wasn't shocked, instead, He lifted the corners of his lips. Someone from Grand Realm commented. Qin Emo must have found it troublesome. That's why he chose the assassin. It's good news for us. Keep quiet and focus, the competition is starting. The moment Yan Yixiao finished his sentence, the countdown ended and everyone entered the arena. Grand Realms members weren't as fast as Bojio. Looking at the game map, a silhouette dashed towards the wilderness. Wherever he went, the grass swayed. Honestly, the director had been following Spadesy at the start. After all, the FC King of Zone C was extremely popular online, and the audience would definitely be interested in his maneuvering. But halfway through, he realized that if he didn't use the system's position, he wouldn't be able to catch up with that person's movement speed. Was he trying to tire himself out as a director by running around like that? He turned the camera, aiming at the well-trained Grand Realm. On the game map, the 5 in-game characters were clearly moving around adeptly. Everyone's division of labor was very clear. There was an attacker, a tank, an assassin, and a sorcerer support. Compared to Supreme Alliance, this was a perfect team. On the other hand, Supreme Alliance had split into 2 lanes. Coco was going up alone while Yao Yao, a sorcerer, was attacking the bottom lane with Feng Shang. This, Supreme Alliance's strategy is really strange. Even more baffling was that there was no one in the middle lane. What was going on? It wasn't just the shoutcaster, the audience was confused as well. On the big screen, the characters on both sides were tiny little people. The audience had a bird's eye view, allowing them to see the coordinates of all the players. But because of that, they couldn't understand the strategy. Were they abandoning the middle lane? Besides, the map showed that there were 2 players attacking the middle lane. The fans couldn't wait for their big spade to rush to the middle lane. But the youngster pressed down on the earpiece. I'm taking a blue beast. Everyone. Blue Beast. What a nickname. The shoutcaster hurriedly explained. Spadesy is an assassin, and it is important for an assassin to gain experience from killing beasts in the wilderness. Almighty Qin was also fighting in the wilderness. One of them was taking the blue, and the other was taking the red. Were they really going to abandon the middle lane? What do you think they are doing? The shoutcaster asked his partner. His partner pondered. Let's watch. They could only watch. This wasn't going according to plan. Look at the bottom lane. The shoutcaster moved his fingers. As the distance between them shortened, the projection on the screen became clearer. Yan Yixiao attacked the bottom lane, leaping out from the wilderness and striking the sorcerer Shui Yaoyao was controlling. The lethality of that strike was not low. Shui Yaoyao's HP dropped by half. Yan Yixiao was cunning. After the attack, he leaped back into the bushes and took a detour back to the tower. He didn't give Shui Yaoyao a chance to react. At the same time, Supreme Alliance realized something. If Shui Yaoyao was the only one on this path, Yan Yixiao would be able to kill a fragile sorcerer like her easily. The reason why Yan Yixiao had retreated after the strike was because Feng Shang was there. From another perspective, this was just the beginning. Yan Yixiao hadn't developed. At the later stages, even with Feng Shang, Shui Yaoyao wouldn't be able to survive. Yan Yixiao had personally come to deal with the 2 rookies, so that they would feel pressured right from the start. This time, Supreme Alliance should be aware of the gap between them. The shoutcaster supported himself with both hands. If this continues, it won't be good. Yan Yixiao's attacks won't stop. And who's going to defend the middle lane? Shui Yaoyao's hands slowed down after the hit. Chapter 8:12. Yan Yixiao. F***CK Qin, what do you mean? At this moment, the youngster glanced up, her silver hair fluttering in the wind as she smiled devilishly. I can kill him twice. The shoutcasters glanced at each other. He must have said it for Yan Yixiao. Yan Yixiao tried his best to maintain his composure, reminding his opponent. Qin, you are on public speaker. I know. Qin replied casually. Yan Yixiao clenched his fists, gritting his teeth. What do you mean I know? You are doing it on purpose. Why don't you talk to me? The youngster's voice was melodious. Yan Yixiao wanted to smash his mouse. Did he think he didn't dare? The members beside him tried to persuade him. Captain, don't fall for it. They are trying to provoke you. Everyone knows how good Spadesy is as an assassin. It's impossible to kill him alone. Yan Yixia was the leader after all. He turned his mouse, suppressing his emotions. Continue attacking. Grand Realms members didn't stop. But they had a question in their minds. Wasn't Qin Mo fighting in the jungle? How did he see their captain ambushing them? Unless he had been switching games while he was fighting. That pervert. Mid lane. Attack. It was a private message from Grand Realm. It was obvious that Supreme Alliance had vacated this area, hence, they had to take it. However, just as they were about to enter the tower, Spadesy cut over from behind, using his second skill to slow them down before launching an attack. It was despicable to attack them at the bottom of the tower. They were experts after all, retreating quickly. They didn't deal much damage. After leaving the tower, one of them fired a long-range cannon. It headed straight for Spadesy. There was a loud bang. Amidst the sparks, the youngster tilted to the left. Just a little bit more and he was almost hit. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. After killing the beasts, Spadesy didn't have much HP left. With this shot, he would definitely die. But it wasn't easy to catch Spadesy in this state. Of course, the two of them wouldn't let go of such a good hunting opportunity. The characteristics of assassins in the early stages of the game were very obvious. They didn't have much attack power, and their HP was low. Moreover, Spadesy didn't have much HP left, so it would be a shame if they didn't chase after him. Without hesitation, the two silhouettes plunged into the wild. In a team battle, there was only one thing that was consistent, and that was to fight with more people. There were two of them, and one of them was a tank. Killing an assassin with half HP would definitely not be a problem. However, there was one thing that the two of them had apparently forgotten. Since he was already at half HP, why did Spadesy still run towards the wilderness instead of directly skimming over the defense tower? The thought of chasing down Spadesy took up a huge part of their minds. Just as he was about to catch up to Spadesy, he sped up to take the first blood. However, at this moment, a man suddenly jumped out from the bushes behind them. It was Qin Mo. He was dressed in silver-white ancient clothes. He went straight for the main DPS and swept his longsword horizontally. Wherever the tip of his sword pointed, the brittle DPS who had 2/3 of his HP immediately dropped to critical health. When the other player reacted, his heart turned cold, and he wanted to retreat. But Spadesy, who had been running forward, suddenly turned around. He plunged straight towards them. At this moment, Spadesy was like an assassin who had been enduring for a long time, and had finally reached her breaking point. She had never intended to escape. This was the first reaction of the two players from Grand Realm. They had already realized that they had fallen into a trap they hadn't noticed. Spadesy had chosen to take a detour in the wilderness to lure them here, because there was Qin Mo, who was killing monsters in the wild. But the two of them hadn't communicated beforehand, and didn't seem to have planned anything. But damn it, it was a direct hit. This was the National League. No one would run around blindly. Hence, right from the start, Spadesy's escape route had been meticulous. For example, in this gap, the assassin Yan Yixia was still dealing with Shui Yaoyao and Feng Shang at the bottom lane while the others were on the top lane, unable to rush over. Spadesy's escape route had caused the two teams to be unable to reinforce each other. This was done intentionally by the other party, but Qin Mo had sensed it too quickly. Without any prior discussion, he had set up an ambush in the bushes and done it silently. The player gritted his teeth and resisted with all his might. He was a tank, trying to buy time for his teammates. As an assassin, there was a tank blocking in front of him. Without a big move, he wouldn't be able to deal much damage. The player from Grand Realm wasn't wrong. They were both professionals after all. With his full HP, it wouldn't be a problem for him to block Qin Mo. But just as he watched the other figure dart past him, heading straight for his teammate, he realized he hadn't been the one holding Qin Mo back. Qin Mo had been the one holding him back in the bushes. Spadesy had been the one holding him back. Spadesy had been the one holding him back. A swift kill. In the eyes of the audience, they were trembling with fear. The escaping player had just activated his escape skill, preparing to rush back to the tower. Just a little bit more. Just as everyone thought he was about to escape, there was a click. The youngster moved the mouse with her right hand, tapping rhythmically. She released her second skill, a blade-like shadow appearing above the opponent's head, slowing him down. Then, with a twist, she pierced the opponent's heart with a high damage. The audience watched the chase on the big screen. Everyone's mouths were agape, their facial expressions magnified, and their eyes filled with shock. It was enough to show how exciting the scene was. The first thing they heard was the sound. It was a special effect from the game. It pierced through the heart. KO. Beside the assassin in black, the long-range attacker from Grand Realm collapsed with blood splattering everywhere. The screen was filled with flashes of light. The audience only saw 2 words: first HP. First kill. Another first kill. Spade Z's fans couldn't help but shout, Zone C. FC King. FC King. FC King. Even the shoutcasters wanted to laugh bitterly. Spade Z, ever since the competition started, he has always been the one to take the FC. Was Spade Z addicted to FC King's kills? Yan Yixiao had just ambushed their player. He immediately started his counterattack. Wait a minute, it's not over, don't forget about Qin Mo. This time, Spade Z's FC King was mainly due to Qin Mo. Qin Mo's maneuvers were perfect to describe Qin Mo's movements. His style was obviously different from the youngsters. His precise attacks, his chiseled handsome face, and his cold aura didn't seem like he was playing a game. Instead, he seemed to be commanding the world. The director cut to Qin Mo's location swiftly. The tank player from Grand Realm was smart, knowing that the two of them weren't that simple. Hence he hurriedly retreated. As he retreated, he didn't forget to send his teammates his coordinates. It was for the sake of everyone running over to launch a counterattack. No one didn't know how to play such a high-level game. Grand Realm had already started retreating the moment they saw their teammate running towards the jungle. Wherever they went was a blind spot. This meant that they were hiding in the bushes, waiting to capture them. Judging from Qin Mo and Spade Z's momentum, they were indeed charging forward. Who would have expected them to be so cunning, not giving chase? The youngster paused for a moment, retreating back to the tower. Her lips curved upwards, filled with malice. Qin Mo came and went without a trace, even clearing the troops in the middle lane, before heading straight for the jungle. His speed was fast. The big screen could only display the match in slow motion, including Spade Z's FC King. Without a specific camera to break down the action, the audience really wouldn't know how the other party died. But this time, Spade Z's fans were worried that their idols would fall for each other's photos. They didn't expect both Almighty Qin and Spade Z to have such strong chemistry and judgment. F***CK. Yan Yixiao was frustrated that he missed. The first kill was crucial to the rhythm of the match. He couldn't allow Supreme Alliance to take the lead. Yan Yixiao changed his mind, gliding over the bushes, heading straight for the rookie at the bottom lane. This time, after killing the beasts, he swung his bat at Shui Yaoyao's head. Shui Yaoyao couldn't react in time and was left with low HP. Fortunately, Feng Shang retreated swiftly, blocking the attack for her. Shui Yaoyao released her freezing skill. If it had been anyone else, they would have been frozen on the spot. However, Yan Yixiao was still Yan Yixiao. After he faked a jump into the grass and dodged the attack, everyone thought he would run away. After all, his HP had dropped. However, Grand Realm's ranged DPS threw a powerful stun skill at Feng Shang's body. It was obvious Feng Shang couldn't move anymore. It was Yan Yixiao's turn to kill the low HP Shui Yaoyao. He took the chance to jump over Feng Shang, releasing a critical attack straight at Shui Yaoyao. As Shui Yaoyao's character fell, Yan Yixiao retreated. Everyone knew it wasn't easy to chase assassins, especially Yan Yixiao's character, which had a fake body. It was impossible to catch up even though he was low on HP. The tower in front hadn't shattered yet, so Feng Shang wasn't in a good position to advance. Spade Z had just taken the first kill, but in less than a minute, Yan Yixiao had caught up to him. The pace of the game was simply too cool. The commotion was so loud that the cameraman's ears were buzzing. Some felt it was a pity. Regardless of Almighty Qin or Big Spade, Yan Yixiao wouldn't have succeeded. It wasn't easy for him to take the first kill. The shoutcasters found it normal. This is the standard of the National League. No matter how hard Shui Yaoyao and Feng Shang work, they still have a fatal flaw. After all, team battles weren't like 1v1 where the individual was strong. It was all about teamwork. Since Yan Yixiao had taken down the first newbie, he would definitely take it a second time. Supreme Alliance had to be careful. But regardless of whether it was Supreme Alliance or Grand Realm, if they were defeated so easily, it would be a sign of their lack of training. But there was one thing. It was the same as the fans' concern. The shoutcasters wanted to know where Spade Z and Qin Mo were. The director knew what the audience wanted to see, hence, he switched the camera to the youngster. That was when they realized he was in Grand Realm's jungle, fighting their beasts. And he wasn't alone. From the audience's perspective, there was another person hiding in the bushes. It was Qin Mo. With Qin Mo's help, Bojio was able to retrieve the blue quickly. After the beasts fell, the two of them retreated swiftly. Grand Realm's long-range attacker didn't dare to fight them head-on, retreating to the bottom of the tower. Unexpectedly, the two of them didn't seem to notice him, heading straight into the jungle on the right side of the map. At this moment, Yan Yixiao was still recovering in the city. After Qin Mo and Bojio were done with the blue beasts, they moved on to the red beasts. If one had to describe their actions, they were like bandits, stealing almost all the beasts in the enemy's jungle, leaving nothing behind. One of them had an invisibility effect while the other was good at hiding in the bushes. They came and went without a trace. Yan Yixiao had finally recovered his HP. Just as he was about to kill a red beast to boost his attack, he jumped over and realized the red beast was gone. It wasn't just the red beast, the other beasts were gone as well. Yan Yixiao sent his teammates a message. "I'm fighting in the jungle." His teammates acknowledged. "We left them for Captain." In order for an assassin to become stronger in the later stages, they had to fight beasts in the early stages. Regardless of whether it was a high-level or low-level game, it was a basic strategy. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to fight in the later stages. When Yan Yixiao saw the message, he stilled. "You didn't fight?" "We didn't," his teammates replied innocently. Yan Yixiao paused, gritting his teeth. Spade Z Qin Mo. King Shameless. He had come to their side to steal beasts. Wasn't he afraid of being caught? The youngster wasn't afraid. After hearing Yan Yixiao's voice, Bojio killed the blue bird on the left side. She wasn't invisible at this moment, and could be seen on the map. Yan Yixiao felt that he couldn't use banditry against the youngster anymore. He had only killed one of them. Spade Z had taken drastic measures against him. Yan Yixiao took a deep breath. But right at this moment, the youngster broke into a smile, tilting her head towards the headphones. Her lips parted as she spoke lazily. "Captain Yan, I'll be taking all the beasts on your side. As an assassin, my motto is to take all the beasts and leave them with nothing. Thank you for your generosity." The shoutcaster, who had wanted to take advantage of the time difference to take a sip of water, spat it out. It seemed like Qin Mo wasn't the only one with a sharp tongue. Spade Z was the same. Yan Yixiao's heart ached for 3 seconds. Chapter 8:13. Many wanted to know Yan Yixiao's thoughts. Even the members of Grand Realm glanced at each other, not daring to make a sound. After all, with the captain's current state, he would lose his mind if he said another word. "Hey, what's going on? Even the beasts are gone." The shoutcaster wasn't the one who had spoken, but Zhao Sampang, who had walked over from the safety tunnel. He was still dressed in an eye-catching battle uniform, his eyes sweeping the battle situation on the screen. 1v1 and he's not doing his best. It seems like little Spade isn't as handsome as Brother Pang. Not to mention how eye-catching Zhao Sanpang's figure was. Even the people standing beside him were tall and outstanding, especially Beauty Luo's face. They immediately caused a commotion among the audience. "It's Xiangnan. Xiangnan is here too. F***CK, it's the champion team. My almighty Xiao is so handsome." Xiao Jing stood at the front of the team, exuding an aura of authority. Even his side profile was chiseled. It was hard not to notice such a person. At this moment, everyone couldn't help but turn around and look at the incomparably eye-catching team. The director noticed the problem and immediately changed the image to a close-up of Xiangnan's team. Although it was only for a second, in such a big competition, it was already very impressive to be able to take up a second of screen. The shoutcaster noticed it as well. I never expected Xiangnan to be here. That's not surprising, they should have just finished their match. I never expected them to be so quick. As expected, any team that meets Xiangnan is doomed. Yes, but it isn't common for Xiangnan to be out in full force. What do you think they are here for? They are obviously here to watch Qin Mo. In all these years, no other member has been as good as Xiangnan's Captain Xiao. The conversation stirred another wave of excitement. Grand Realm glanced up, lowering his voice. Captain, it's Xiangnan. Yan Yixiao didn't stop moving. Xiangnan? Let's show Zhao Sampeng our skills. He had been praising himself in the Alliance group chat all day long. Only the heavens knew how much he wanted to slap Qin Mo's face. Little Yan's monster must have been stolen. Zhao Sampeng stared for 2 seconds before bursting into laughter. Who did this? Well done. Beauty Luo lifted her lips into a seductive smile. Who else could it be? It has to be my big spade. My almighty is just that handsome. Restrain yourself, do you hear me? We're here to investigate the enemy, not for you to be a love-struck fool. Your age isn't suitable for little spade. Sis, wake up. With that, Zhao Sampeng turned to look at the layout. Supreme Alliance is in danger, the bottom lane is too weak. What exactly is Qin Mo thinking? Hearing this, Xiao Jing, who had one hand in his pocket, looked up at the game map displayed on the screen, then narrowed his eyes. Then he shifted his gaze. It was placed on the man wearing headphones and a pure black combat suit. What was Qin Mo thinking? Of course, this kind of gaze would be noticed by the fans. Oh, I can't take it anymore. Even though I'm infatuated with Almighty Qin and Big Spade. Don't you think Almighty Xiao always looks at Almighty Qin with such passion? Almighty Xiao only comes when Almighty Qin is around. A love-hate relationship, it's so cool. Chapter 8:14. What's coming? Before the crowd could figure out what Xiao Jing meant, Gu Yan's eyes lit up. On the screen, Yan Yixiao quickly adjusted his strategy and gave his teammates a coordinate. Leave one in the top and middle lanes. The rest of you follow me. After receiving the order, the players from Grand Realm turned around and left. Their movements were practiced, and they walked through the bushes. Their speed was so fast that they could barely be seen on the screen. Shui Yaoyao and Feng Shang weren't aware of the impending danger. Yan Yixiao had already swung his bat down. The audience sucked in a breath of cold air. Was the team about to start? Supreme Alliance's sorcerer newbie definitely won't be able to withstand such an aggressive attack. That was their first reaction. Supreme Alliance's sorcerer will die. Beauty Luo's gaze turned serious. Zhao Sampeng narrowed his eyes. It seems like Little Yan has noticed Supreme Alliance's weakness. Such a premeditated attack definitely wasn't done on a whim. The sorcerer added a crowd control, and the long-range attacker used a stunning move. Feng Shang and Shui Yaoyao were pinned to the ground. Since Yan Yixiao had no more beasts to kill, he decided to go for the kill. 3 against 2. 2 against 2 newbies. Shui Yaoyao and Feng Shang were being beaten up. It's too late. Beauty Luo frowned, glancing at the screen. As expected, even though Shui Yaoyao wasn't killed immediately, she died after using the freezing skill. She hadn't even used her big move. The good thing was that the skill had been cast quite well. It had directly frozen the 3 opponents outside the tower. It bought some time for the unconscious Feng Shang. But the danger was that Feng Shang didn't have much HP left. Supreme Alliance might lose 2 lives this time. The audience's hearts were in their throats. In the game, every second passed extremely slowly. Was Supreme Alliance really going to be finished? 2 lives were lost in an instant. How were they going to turn the tables? But at this moment, a dagger hung over the heads of the 3 members of Grand Realm. This was. The audience's eyes lit up instantly. There was no mistake. That was Spadezi's mark. When the mark appeared, it meant that Spadezi was nearby. As expected, People saw the three frozen people being slowed down by a series of attacks. Then Spadesy appeared, unleashing a skill straight at the enemy's long-range shooter. With an explosive attack, it wasn't a problem to take down a HP in 2 to 3 seconds. Even if the other party was an expert, he could only take a beating if he was frozen. When he said these words, it was only a matter of a moment. Yan Yixiao swiftly retaliated, wanting to hit Spadesy with his bat. Who knew that this person would be so hard to catch? Like a shadow, his figure flashed again. Did he escape? This time, Yan Yixiao and his teammates learned from their experience and didn't chase after him. However, was there any use in not chasing after him? Just as they retreated, a lone white figure flashed in front of them. His speed was so swift that he came and went without a trace, and it was utterly impossible to guard against him. With a powerful skill, the tip of the sword pointed at both of them, causing their HP to drop. Was there even a need to say who that figure was? There were only a few people in the arena, and they could be counted on one hand. Chapter 8:15. On Grand Realm's side, they had never thought of fighting Qin Mo alone. But this time, they couldn't help it. The sound of sword energy filled the air. The sorcerer from Grand Realm wasn't at full HP, so he was in critical condition in one move. Yan Yixiao had wanted to cover for him. But how? Spadesy appeared at this moment, giving him a big move, forcing him to return to the tower. The two of them were clearly doing it on purpose. Oh. When the music started playing, Qin Mo's assassin jumped back. The assassin under Qin Mo's control jumped back. Not only did he kill someone, he also snatched a wild beast from his side. Was he sure he wouldn't dare to leave the tower? Yan Yixiao tightened his grip on the mouse. His score was overtaken. It was a score of 2 to 3. This round of killing, Yan Yixiao hadn't managed to gain any advantage. Replay, hurry up and replay. That was the most fervent thought of the audience. It had been too fast. Only gamers would be able to tell how Qin Mo had managed to kill someone. The ordinary audience wouldn't be able to tell. Beauty Luo narrowed her eyes and turned toward Xiaojing. Captain, are you referring to Qin Mo when you say he's here? What else can I do? Xiaojing asked calmly. Zhao Sampeng interrupted. We thought you were referring to Little Yan, but Qin Mo's move is too shameless. He even took out one of his beasts. If I were Little Yan, I wouldn't be able to tolerate him. What can I do? Leave the tower? Beauty Luo rolled her eyes. Don't forget, my big spade is still there. Zhao Sampeng was also looking at the layout of the game, still finding it shameless. One of them is a jungler while the other is guarding. Isn't that a little too shameless? Why does Little Spade steal Qin Mo's jungler like a loyal puppy? We're from the same team. What's there to snatch? Beauty Luo was speechless. The moment the men on their side saw Qin Mo, they inexplicably ganged up on him. They could only blame Almighty Qin for attracting hatred. But Zhao Sampeng wasn't wrong. When Qin Mo was fighting, there would definitely be a character controlled by the youngster guarding him. Even though he was filled with murderous intent, it was a stark contrast. It was indeed a loyal dog. Don't tell me the two of them used this method to steal all of the enemy's wilderness? Shameless and shameless working together. What a shameless combination. Zhao Sampeng shook his head. I told you to bring Little Spade over as soon as possible, but you wouldn't listen. Look at what he has learned from Qin Mo. He has led him astray. Little Yan must be crying right now. Not necessarily. Beauty Luo glanced down at Shui Yaoyao. For a team battle, a sorcerer dying twice isn't good news. Supreme Alliance might be at a disadvantage in the later stages of the team battle. I hope she can regain her composure and realize that this is the National League. It was obvious who Beauty Luo was referring to. Supreme Alliance lost 2 lives. They were all Shui Yaoyao. Normally, even pro players would be sweating at this moment. Shui Yaoyao was no exception, but the brightness in her eyes didn't diminish. Beauty Luo stilled before breaking into a smile. Supreme Alliance looks impressive this year. Chapter 8:16. Everyone's eyes were on Shui Yaoyao at this moment. Once the team battle started, it wouldn't stop. They didn't care about the tower anymore. Jungle battles were the foundation of the National League. This time, it was time for the team battle. Coco was the support player standing at the front. Feng Shang was a long-range attacker while Shui Yaoyao was a sorcerer, staying at the back. They stood at the bottom lane's jungle. Spadesy's character had only appeared in Grand Realm's line of sight at the start. After a while he disappeared. It was obvious that he had turned invisible. This was the time for Yan Yixiao to determine Spadesy's position. Was he on the left, right, or in the middle of the team? A battle between experts was all about strategy and timing. It was to prevent Spadesy from being in the middle of the team. Grand Realm fired a long-range cannon without warning. Beauty Luo narrowed her eyes. Everyone had the same worry. A long-range cannon would take away half of Shui Yaoyao's HP. Fortunately, she tilted to the side, avoiding it. But the cannon still managed to disrupt Supreme Alliance's formation. This time, Yan Yixiao didn't rush out first. Instead, he used a fake body to sneak past them, hiding in the bushes. It was obvious who he was trying to catch. No one could see his actions other than the audience. Grand Realm's long-range attacks didn't stop. It was an obvious strategy, 3 encirclements. They made use of the jungle's ingenuity, firing a cannon to break through the formation before targeting one of the players. There were also 2 players stationed at the outer perimeter, in case Spadesy and Qin Mo suddenly appeared. Supreme Alliance didn't have a tank blocking the front, which wasn't a good strategy. Right now, Yan Yixiao was crouching there to catch them. From the looks of it, Coco, who was at the front, was in the most danger. But in reality, Shui Yaoyao was the one in danger. Once the team battle started, Grand Realm's tank would have terrifying HP regeneration. Both Qin Mo and Bo Jiu would face a terrifying defense if they jumped in at this moment. He was tanky and healed himself. This kind of character was really not suitable for assassins to kill. Spadesy hasn't appeared yet. I'm afraid that's the reason. Qin Mo should be the same. Supreme Alliance is retreating. The audience was so nervous that they wanted to remind Shui Yaoyao to watch her back. But at the same time, they also knew that no matter how loud they shouted, the contestants wearing headphones wouldn't be able to hear anything. As Shui Yaoyao retreated, she was getting closer and closer to Yan Yixiao. Some fans couldn't even bear to watch what happened next. Since there wasn't a knife on Yan Yixiao's head, Little Spade wasn't around. Yan Yixiao knew that his chance had come. With Coco down, this team battle was basically over. Even though 2 of Grand Realm's players were in critical health, so what? None of the 5 of them had died. On the other hand, once Shui Yaoyao, the sorcerer, was killed, the opponent would lose control and Feng Shang would also be killed. Supreme Alliance is probably going to be wiped out. 3 lives, one of which was the newbie mages. The commentator did not want to talk about the result, because it was too tragic. Chapter 8:17. Everyone watched as the rod was about to land on Shui Yaoyao's head. Their hearts clenched. But at this moment, Shui Yaoyao's freezing technique froze Yan Yixiao in midair. Yan Yixiao's character was still holding the long rod. He was frozen in place. The next moment, an icy rain fell. Rather than saying it was rain, it was more like ice blades. The formation they formed was extremely lethal. Everyone, including Grand Realm, hadn't expected Shui Yaoyao to use this move. Wasn't she a newbie? How would a newbie know there was someone in the bushes? That was a beautiful big move. There weren't many people that could win Beauty Luo's praise. Zhao Sampeng arched a brow. A beautiful coincidence. Beauty Luo glanced at him. Don't underestimate us women. You guys aren't the only ones good at strategic analysis. Girls can do it too. Or are you bored and want to be tortured by me? Zhao Sampeng didn't understand. They were clearly teammates. Weren't they? She was so beautiful, wasn't she? Why did she always want to fight and kill? Luoluo's fans definitely didn't know her big sister side. It was too scary. But if it wasn't a coincidence, then Supreme Alliance's newbie sorcerer would definitely be amazing. Everyone knew that as a sorcerer, they had to be meticulous in their calculations and sharp senses. It was important to use the right technique to control the opponent at the right time. Just like now. That rookie mage's freeze spell and ice rain spell couldn't be faster or slower by a second. If it was too fast, it wouldn't be able to freeze Yan Yixiao. If it was too slow, Yan Yixiao would kill him before he could use his big move. He hadn't expected her to have such a move. In reality, Shui Yaoyao wasn't as calm as she looked on the surface. Her right hand that was holding the mouse was sweaty, and she couldn't help but lick her lips nervously when she was typing. After being beaten twice, she more or less noticed Yan Yixiao's habits. She had specially kept the formation to prevent him from catching her. She hadn't expected it to come in handy. The formation lasted long enough for Yan Yixiao, the assassin, to be severely injured. Fortunately, Yan Yixiao knew how to use a fake body to jump out. It could be said that Yan Yixiao was really worried for himself this time. However, there was one thing that he did not expect at all. The moment he jumped out of the spirit array, a figure appeared in front of him. A silhouette swept past him from his right. He didn't even use his ultimate skill. With a sweep of his sword, Yan Yixiao was unable to escape. The sound effects started playing. KO. Yan Yixiao really wanted to smash his mouse. Qin Mo. Was he purposely here to collect heads? Ah. Of all times, he had chosen this moment to appear. However, it was not over yet. The audience only saw the figure, like a sharp sword, directly sweeping towards the other three people. With a powerful phalanx formation, the enemy mage's HP was reduced to a critical level. Seeing this, Fengshang, who was about to escape, suddenly stopped. He turned around and fired a long-range cannon at them. Qin Mo seized the opportunity to jump back, but he didn't have the slightest intention to retract his long sword. Even though there were 4 of them, the tip of the sword was aimed straight at the opposing mage. Before the audience could react, 2 large words suddenly appeared on the screen. He was so cool, double kill. Chapter 8:18. At this moment, Yan Yixiao wasn't the only one gripping his mouse tightly. Even Xiaojing, who was standing in the middle of the crowd, narrowed his eyes. Everyone knew that. Once Qin Mo started killing, he wouldn't stop. His 3,000 knife cutting wasn't just for show. If they didn't disrupt his rhythm now, if he was allowed to kill enough people, then even if the 3 members of Grand Realm worked together, they wouldn't be able to stop him. That was Qin Mo, a presence that all experts feared. But Grand Realm wasn't a pushover, especially when there was a tank on the other side. With a big move, he gave Qin Mo a close-range damage. Grand Realm's men saw the opportunity and wanted to outflank him, but he had already used his big move. But the person in front of them was gone. On the screen, Qin Mo's right hand moved, the mouse moving the keyboard as he leaped out of the crowd and into the bushes. Grand Realm knew where he was. They were about to surround him, but a symbol appeared above his head. That was Spadesy. Where was he? Grand Realm's tank was still searching. Instinctively, he wanted to turn back, but there was no sign of him. He hadn't appeared. He wasn't in the bushes either. Where exactly was he? At this moment, Qin Mo raised his sword again, using his second skill. He swept past him, stabbing the support before leaping back. Grand Realm's hand speed wasn't slow, but compared to Qin Mo, they were slightly slower. They couldn't catch him at all. Moreover, they didn't have their sorcerer or assassin. They couldn't control Qin Mo. What was more frightening was the dagger hovering above their heads. Spadesy still hadn't appeared. Was he doing this on purpose? Where exactly is he? Grand Realm's long-range shooter felt his scalp go numb. He didn't dare to leave the team because the moment he did, Spadesy would be able to kill him instantly. Retreat. Yan Yixiao wasn't willing, but he had to give the order. But how could she allow them to retreat so easily? She watched as they took a step forward, using her second skill to slow them down. With a twist, she appeared beside the support, her explosive attack leaving him in a critical state. Grand Realm's main focus was on the long-range archer. Moreover, the support was more durable. Even if Spadesy appeared, he wouldn't be able to kill him in a second. Bo Jiu alone wasn't enough to take down an assistant. However, the people from Grand Realm had forgotten. Even if Qin Mo was at critical health, he could still turn the tide in the team battle. Besides, he had Bojo by his side. I waited for the skill to recover, and a second later, I dashed forward. The electric formation slowed me down, and I jumped back. 3 consecutive breaks. But when this line of words appeared on the big screen, the screams from the scene could almost tear the entire roof off. Yan Yixiao loosened his grip on the mouse. He had finally revived, but he had lost the best opportunity to fight. He still couldn't stop him. Chinemo. If it was before, make use of this tactic. No matter how powerful Chinemo was, he wouldn't charge in like that. Firstly, it was because he was playing team control. Secondly, he couldn't take the risk. If he died, it wouldn't just be a blow to Supreme Alliance's tactics, it would also be a psychological blow. But now he didn't hesitate at all. It was as if this was the real him. Wherever the tip of the sword pointed, not a single trace was left. Was it because of that person's cooperation? Chapter 819. Spadesy. He didn't just bring Supreme Alliance an assassin that could launch sneak attacks. Most importantly, with him, Chinemo would be invincible. If that was the case, Supreme Alliance might be able to go against Xiangnan. Yan Yixiao glanced at the screen, breaking into a smile. There was nothing more exciting than meeting a strong team. Even if he knew the outcome wouldn't be as he had expected, it was worth it. He had to give it his all in this match. Supreme Alliance was strong, but they weren't weak either. Are you ready? Yan Yixiao asked his teammates as he moved his mouse. The other 4 members of Grand Realm moved forward. The real team battle is about to begin. Beauty Luo crossed her arms, arching a brow. Just as she finished her sentence, Grand Realm spread out in a pentagonal formation. It seemed casual, but in reality, it was able to regroup quickly. Besides, this formation was the easiest way to obstruct the assassin's sneak attack. Yan Yixiao had always been known as a commander because he was familiar with all the heroes in the game. He had a clear idea of the formation. With such a formation, it would be very fast if they wanted to take down a person. That was how Coco, who had wanted to retreat after taking down the tower, was caught. As an assassin, Yan Yixiao didn't charge forward this time. Instead, he focused on sneak attacks. The 3 of them went up first with the sorcerer controlling. Coco managed to escape, but not the second. Yan Yixiao leaped out, blocking his path and smashing down with his rod. Coco's HP dropped to critical levels. At this moment, Grand Realm's long-range attack launched a cannon. It was enough to take down Coco. But to everyone's surprise, at this moment, someone used a freezing skill. 3 of them were encircled and frozen on the spot. Then came the Ice Rain spell. Supreme Alliance's sorcerer is hiding in the bushes. What an unexpected move. But it was obvious that Grand Realm wasn't an easy opponent. With a big move, it interrupted Shui Yaoyao's rain spell and slowed her down. Shui Yaoyao's fingers tightened. She found the right time to use her flash skill to escape the pursuit. At this time, Fengshang jumped out and attacked the 3 players with a sniper cannon, instantly killing one of them. At first, they thought Supreme Alliance was in a good position. After all, they were the first to kill in the team battle. But no one noticed. At this moment, Yan Yixiao moved in front of Shui Yaoyao and swung his club at her, as she tried to return to the city. KO. A screen on Supreme Alliance's side turned gray. This was not as simple as losing a life. But if Shui Yaoyao died, the team battle would go from a 5v5 to a 4v5. Even Fengshang had killed 1 person. His cannon had even left 2 of them with critical HP. But this kind of exchange was not worth it. With the sorcerers surrounded, how was Supreme Alliance going to fight? Without any control, with Grand Realm's technology, they would be able to attack very quickly. Was Supreme Alliance going to lose? Just when everyone's eyes were looking down, Grand Realm sent out an emergency signal. Yan Yixiao's eyes were piercing with that redness. What was going on? The audience lifted their heads to search for the source of the sound. If they hadn't seen it, they wouldn't have known. But when they saw it, everyone was stunned. Their eyes were reflected in front of the camera, and they were shocked. Chapter 820. Spadesy. who shouldn't have appeared anywhere. The young man must have swept over from the bottom lane, with a wave of sieging soldiers behind him. Everyone's attention was on the team battle, and Bojio's character had an invisibility skill, so no one could see Spadesy approaching the city. Just at that moment, Spadesy appeared on the screen. The danger signal from the city made everyone feel threatened. Not to mention that in the very next second, the danger signal was sent out. Qin Emo, dressed in white, had already rushed in with his sword. Both of them possessed extraordinary lethality. The city wouldn't be able to hold on for long under the combined attacks. Yan Yixiao's scalp was numb. He quickly typed on the keyboard, sweat forming on his forehead. All he wanted was to run back as fast as possible. At this time, they really couldn't care less about the team battle. The city was destroyed. This also meant that the entire game would end. Zhao Sampang, who was watching from outside the arena, opened his mouth wide enough to stuff his fist in. F***CK, F***CK, that's shameless. Captain, did you see that? Qin Emo had teamed up with Little Spade to steal the city. What happened to the team battle? Little Yen is really going to die of anger this time. Xiao Jing didn't speak. He just looked at the two figures on the screen, and his eyes darkened. Strange. Why isn't the captain saying anything? Shouldn't he be discussing the theft of the city with him now? He waited for about a second. Xiao Jing retracted his gaze and said, Qin Mo's 3000 knife cutting isn't out yet. What does that mean? Zhao Sampang was confused. At this moment, Yan Yixiao's character reached the edge of the city. But apart from the fact that his character could run very quickly, as for the others, they needed time to return to the city. However, the battered city could not wait that long. Moreover, Qin Emo was standing in front of him. The moment Yan Yixiao used his fake jump, he leaped over Qin Emo and his bat landed on Spadesy, destroying the city. Debris fell. Everyone stopped moving. The tapping sound of the keyboard fell into silence. The word failure swept across all 5 of Grand Realm's computers. The screen went dark. Immediately after, it was the cheers from Supreme Alliance. Lin Feng was the first to jump up. That wasn't all. He even hugged Yin Hu beside him. At this time there was nothing extra. We won, we won. Lin Feng's voice rang in their ears. Yin Hu pressed his back with one hand, his gaze bright. Yes, we won. Shui Yaoyao was stunned. She couldn't believe it. Her first reaction was to look at Feng Shang, who was sitting next to her. After the face was stunned for a moment, it immediately bloomed into a bright smile, as if saying, Yao Yao, look, we won. No victory was by chance. If it wasn't for Shui Yaoyao's ultimate that hit the bullseye and slowed down Grand Realm's team members, they would have died. If it wasn't for Feng Shang's timely long-range cannon, if it wasn't for Coco's support, that way, they wouldn't have been able to steal the city so quickly. All his efforts were not wasted. Those days of eating instant noodles and writing advanced mathematics questions. Those who saw Feng Shang lying in front of the computer, so tired that he closed his eyes, still holding the mouse in his hand. Chapter 8:21. The victory of this battle was somewhat unexpected. After all, even the spectators didn't know how they had managed to reach the enemy's city. To prevent the audience from getting impatient, the director replayed the scene immediately. It was from Qin Mo's perspective. When everything was slowed down, the audience realized that Qin Emo appeared in a flash. Yan Yixiao, who had been focused on his surroundings, had forgotten how fast Qin Mo's movements were and how hard it was to catch him. That wasn't all. The changing of the map was a blur. Even when Qin Emo was stealing the city, he didn't forget to look at the team battle behind him. If you want to steal a city, then steal a city. Why does Almighty Qin have to switch the game map back and forth? It's making my eyes dizzy, a girl nagged. She didn't expect that the person sitting next to her would answer her. His voice was very pleasant to hear. That's calculating the time difference. Calculating the time difference? The girl searched for the source of the voice, but he had already stood up, standing against the light. His face was clear and handsome, clearly not an ordinary passerby. The most important factor in the success of the attack is the time difference. At this moment, the girl was in a daze, watching as he turned to leave. 3 seconds later, she snapped out of her daze, tugging at her friend. Hey, I think I saw Almighty Hoshi. He was sitting beside me just now. Her friend shot her a "you're dreaming" look, patting her shoulder with his left hand. Did you forget to take your medicine today? Is Almighty Hoshi someone you can see so easily? He was even sitting beside you. Sis, seriously, hallucinations are an illness, you have to treat it. The girl was anxious. I really saw him. Sis, that isn't important. What's important is that our big spade won. Working together with Almighty Qin, they are invincible. Her friend propped his chin up, his eyes shining. The attack was so cool. The entire stadium was filled with cheers. Zhao Sampang was the only one who asked Xiao Jing persistently, Captain, what exactly did you mean by that? It means that Yan Yixiao wasn't able to force Qin Mo to reveal his true abilities. Beauty Luo spoke up for Xiao Jing. Beauty Luo spoke up for Xiao Jing, her gaze deep. Fatty, do you still remember the first time we faced Qin Mo? Of course. Zhao Sampang gritted his teeth at the thought of a certain someone from 3 years ago. That was the first time I saw such an arrogant person. He was just a high school graduate and yet he said he wanted to be the best esports player. Beauty Luo narrowed her eyes. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that match. At that time the three of us, you, me and Xiao Jing, couldn't stop him. Even if he had a teammate, he wouldn't have lost. We would have lost. Zhao Sampang paused, then fell silent. Chapter 822. Zhao Sampang was silent for a few seconds after hearing Beauty Luo's words. Xiao Jing glanced over, his voice calm. Even if Qin Mo didn't use the 3000 knife cutting, it doesn't mean Yan Yixiao didn't force him to use his true abilities. There is another possibility. With this he paused, glancing up. It's hard for him to use that ultimate move now. Captain, you mean? Beauty Luo's eyes widened. But didn't Qin Mo go to America? Aren't the best medical specialists there? Xiao Jing remained silent. Glancing over, the entire arena was still bustling with activity. Qin Mo, who was standing in the middle, was still as tall as ever. Perhaps, other than his opponent, no one else could see any flaws in his disguise. But that was just a possibility. After removing her earpiece, Bojiu glanced over, her gaze landing on his smooth wrist. Qin Mo's expression was still nonchalant as he met the youngster's gaze with the side of his eyes. That handsome face was a little breathtaking, but there wasn't any difference. Bojiu arched a brow. Was she wrong? Qin Mo didn't give her time to think, reaching out and pulling her forward. He lowered his voice. Wait for me in the car. There are some things we need to discuss. The commotion continued, but the person was extremely close. He was so close that even though there were many people around, Bojiu couldn't bear to part with him because of his melodious voice. She really wanted to ask the Almighty how he would react if she knocked him unconscious and brought him away. He would probably give her a look when he woke up, allowing her to understand. But that was just a thought. Bojiu knew it wouldn't be easy to bring the Almighty away. If it was after the National League, she might have thought of using a devious method, but that would have to be when the Almighty wasn't looking. But now, something had to be done in advance. 5 minutes. Bojiu's gaze landed on the countdown timer. Then she shifted her gaze back. Almost instantly, a route formed in her mind. The competition venue was a modernized commercial plaza. In this commercial plaza, the outer perimeter of the semicircular fan blades was built into an esports arena. The main building was made of completely transparent dark-colored glass. On the first floor, there was a crowded coffee shop. Extending inwards, high-end cosmetics and all kinds of light luxury products were on this floor. The second to fourth floors were filled with trendy clothing. On the fifth floor, there were a few dessert shops and a cinema. The route in Bojiu's mind led to the fifth floor of the commercial Soho building. You seem to be paying extra attention to the time today. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster with a deep gaze. Bojiu knew the Almighty wasn't easy to deal with. A psychologist would be able to notice any changes. Hence, it was better to admit it than to avoid it. I'm thinking about how Brother Mo is going to talk to me later, and I instinctively look at the time. It's even more stressful than playing games. Bojo was serious. Is this the legendary feeling of being unable to sit still? Chinemo glanced at the clean and fair face in front, his brows arched. Bojo, I'm not sure. I have this skill occasionally. Bojo smiled faintly. Chinemo watched as the reporters walked over. Before he left, he reached out to caress the youngster's head. When he brushed past her, his voice was melodious. Don't worry, I won't make you restless for too long. Your brother Emo can do whatever he likes. Chapter 8:23. At this moment, the other members walked over. Chinemo retracted his hand, his expression calm. Everyone from Supreme Alliance was going to be interviewed. Some were joined together, and some were separated. Bojo knew it was an opportunity. She glanced to the left. While the Almighty was busy with his exclusive interview and the crowd was in chaos, she retreated while pulling the zipper down. She glanced at the interview and placed the eye-catching jacket on the chair Lin Feng had been sitting on. She casually reached for the cameraman's hooded uniform that was still adjusting the camera. With a twist of her wrist, the uniform landed on her shoulders. She lowered her head and extended her sleeves, pressing down on the brim of the cap with one hand before heading towards the backstage. At this moment, everyone's attention was focused on the interview. None of them noticed her actions. After all, it was as if she had done those actions countless times. The Realzy could use anything at hand as a disguise. This was also the reason why it was so difficult for the police to catch her in the Fifth Avenue. The most difficult part was how to escape from the crowd. After all, Bojo's silver hair was too eye-catching. Even with the uniform as a cover, there was no guarantee that she wouldn't be recognized. Hence, it was a risky move. Bojo tried her best to relax. She hadn't done such things for a long time, but her disguise skills hadn't deteriorated. While she blended in, she lowered her face and reached for her phone with her left hand. She tilted her head in a practiced manner. Where is the thing I want? The moment Bojo made her move, Hoshino stood at the spot with the best view. He had a Bluetooth earpiece in his left ear, his features as clear as a painting. Walk another 100 meters, and there will be an air vent on your left. Once you enter, there will be a washroom 300 meters away. It's the men's washroom. There's a package under the second sink on the first row. All right. Bojo didn't waste her time. She kept her phone and walked away, fitting the mood of the nerds who had just finished watching an esports competition. The people around them were still talking about the game that had just happened. The number of times Bojo heard her ID wasn't small. She pressed the brim of her cap down. I never expected Supreme Alliance to be so good this year. Of course, don't forget Spadesy is in there. Boss, do you think Spadesy is the one we played with previously? Nonsense. If it wasn't him, who else could it be? When you go to number 1 middle school in the future, make sure you don't hurt our allies' hands, understand? Bojo lifted her lids. It wasn't until she looked that she realized he was the troublemaker from the neighboring school. That underling was still listening to the scolding next to him. No way, boss. Since ancient times, our number 2 middle school and no 1 middle school have always been incompatible like fire and water. What if we get into a fight, and they mistake us for someone else? How could you not recognize his face? The troublemaker finally said something reliable. The underling thought about it, and felt that it was indeed a good choice. After all, he was so outstanding. Wait a minute. The person who looked at him just now. Boss. The underling anxiously tugged at the troublesome guy's school uniform. The troublemaker immediately looked back. What's wrong? Is there a beauty? Where? She's not a beauty. Actually, I'm still hesitating whether I've recognized the wrong person. After all, the most handsome guy in number 1 middle school shouldn't be wearing that kind of clothes. The unruly kid glared at him. If you're not a beauty, why did you call me? The lackey shrank back. Nothing. Chapter 8:24. Bojo lifted her lips, walking beside them. After less than 7 seconds, she followed the path Hoshino had given her, heading towards the air vent at the side. The underling wanted to follow, but his boss pulled him back. He was pulled back by his boss. "I say, did you just join us? You don't know anything yet. Don't run around. If you get lost, we'll have to look for you. Do you want to eat fries? Hurry up and give us some money. We can even find an excuse to date a beauty." It was no wonder their boss couldn't find a girlfriend. Who would go for fries with a girl? Now they would all go to Hoshino. No matter how worried this little brother is about that figure, it's of no use. Basically, they were dragged along. If there was anything good about their boss, it would be that he was too Chinibu. He took care of his brothers very well. He didn't even have a chance to follow a suspicious person. Bojio continued moving quickly. 2 out of the 5 minutes had passed. There were less than 3 minutes left. The Supreme Alliance members would realize she hadn't gone for an exclusive interview. Hence, she had to disguise herself well. The washroom that Hoshino had mentioned wasn't usually frequented, but it was different today. After the esports competition, the washrooms at the main venue were full. Hence, a group of people naturally found this washroom. Bojio walked in, sweeping a glance at the 3 figures standing beside the urinal. When she walked towards the sink, she brushed past one of them. It wasn't anyone else but a member of Grand Realm. Fortunately, they had left in a hurry and probably hadn't glanced in her direction. But Bojio was clear that the other 3 were from Grand Realm as they hadn't removed their uniforms. Bojio narrowed her eyes. She lowered the brim of her cap and turned on the tap. Her left hand moved downwards, touching the tape below the sink. There would definitely be a sound if she tore it, but if she didn't, it would be troublesome if the 3 of them saw it first. Bojio reached her fingers out and bent her body. She looked as though she was washing her face. But in reality, her expression had changed the moment she lowered her lids. Her mind was spinning rapidly. The last one was forceful. There was a loud tearing sound. The package fell onto the ground. Bojio's first reaction was to kneel down, muttering, F***ck. His tone was extremely vexed. It was as if he had accidentally dropped something. The people from Grand Realm glanced over, but didn't pay much attention. They emptied their drinks and pulled up their pants. Bojio took advantage of this blind spot and stuffed the bag into her arms. After they left, she stood up and locked the bathroom door. Most of the bathrooms in this kind of place were very high-end. There was a row of sinks with quick-drying machines and hand sanitizer. There were also some coffee bean dregs, so there wouldn't be any odor. Instead, it was very clean. The youngster in the mirror changed clothes very quickly. When she took off her coat, her left hand had already torn open the package. Inside was a uniform of a cinema worker. From what he knew, the suspect who used the software to commit the crime would be watching a movie here in 10 minutes. What Bojio needed to do was to confirm if he had committed the crime without alerting him. The key case investigation unit had locked onto 5 suspects, and today's case seemed to be the most suspicious. Chapter 8:25. Bojio lifted her lids and looked at herself in the mirror. She couldn't take too long to disguise herself. This was the washroom after all. Even if she had hung the cleaning sign on the doorknob when she came in, it was inevitable that someone would knock on the door anxiously. Hence, she had to be quick. Coupled with that head of silver hair and that face, it was too recognizable. She had to change. This time, Bojio didn't choose to wear a wig. Instead, she asked Hoshino to roll a hairspray into her uniform so that it would be easier for her to retreat. After all, she would have to jump and climb walls during the process. Bojio narrowed her eyes and leaned over. She brushed her hair with her left hand and raised the hairspray with her right. The dazzling silver was slowly dyed into a pure black. It was like the reflection of the youngster's eyes in the mirror, deep as jade. At this moment, in the interview venue, no one wanted to move the microphone closer to Chin-mo. There were more than 5 media outlets there. Everyone knew what Chin-mo's appearance meant. Ratings, reports, headlines. Be it esports or finance. But it was too difficult to get Chin-mo to say anything. Even though he didn't show any impatience, he wasn't very enthusiastic either. After all, his family background was there and etiquette was the most important. Hence, just by standing there, He was like a cool breeze and a bright moon. It was a little cold, but it was enough to suppress the crowd. Moreover, Qin Mo was wearing his uniform. It was worth it to be able to get 1 or 2 photos. Even though Qin Mo replied with a MMH to every single one of their questions, Qin Mo didn't seem to care. The media admitted their defeat. After all, young Master Qin rarely appeared in front of the public. It wasn't bad to be able to do this. There were some questions that they didn't dare to ask. But there were newbies among them who didn't know if they dared to ask or not. They asked directly, "Young Master Qin, after the variety show aired, many people became fans of you and your teammates. What do you think about you and Spadesy becoming the most popular esports couple online?" This question came out. All the media went silent. Which family was this bold enough to ask the question that all of them wanted to ask? But those who stayed in Jiang City for a long time knew that young Master Qin didn't like to answer such questions. As expected, the man holding the microphone frowned. The reporters subconsciously retracted their hands. The deep voice rang out with a hint of indifference. The eyes of the masses are very sharp. When the rest of the team members heard this, they all looked at the ceiling. The captain's answer was basically confirming this matter. The reporters present were all smart people. How could they not understand the meaning behind those words? However, the key point was that this was truly unexpected. The newcomer wanted to ask more questions. Qin Mo glanced up at the bodyguard beside him. This action signified the end of the solo session. No one dared to step forward. After all, Qin Mo had answered all 5 questions. In a sense, it was time for the interview to end. But it was not enough. Every media outlet wanted to know more about Qin Mo. Lin Feng couldn't help but shake his head. These people were really too stupid. If all the questions were about Little Spade, their captain would definitely be willing to answer. Where is that guy? Qin Mo suddenly stopped in his tracks. Chapter 826. Private Interview. Qin Mo's deep eyes swept over the pure black jacket on the chair. Then he reached out to pick it up, a cold glint flashing across his eyes. Would he take off his uniform here for an interview? Lin Feng stilled. That was right, he had to wear his uniform for an interview. Why hadn't he thought of that? But if Little Spade wasn't going for an interview, where did he go? Perhaps he went to the toilet? Qin Mo didn't say anything else, but his grip on the black jacket tightened little by little. Then he strolled to the left. Lin Feng called out, "Captain." Qin Mo didn't seem to have any intention of turning back. Lin Feng was confused. Logically speaking, Little Spade had only disappeared for a short while. Why was his captain reacting in such a manner? Wasn't this too abnormal? Was the relationship between his captain and Little Spade so deep that a minute apart felt like 3 years? Abnormal? Actually, Qin Mo's reaction wasn't abnormal. Before the competition, he had already sensed something. But he hadn't expected her to be so daring, slipping away right under his nose. If he had known, he would have watched her 24/7. A certain someone's claws just couldn't stay still. Qin Mo was clear that it wasn't a simple disappearance. If she had really left for a short while, it wouldn't have been like this. What exactly was she up to? Qin Mo clenched his fists when he didn't see the familiar figure. He just stood there for a second, allowing the crowd to clamor. In the end, he took out his phone, his voice cold. "Where? Young Master?" The Special Forces soldier, who was hesitating over the cotton candy, gave up on the thought of queuing with the kids after receiving the call. With his height, the little cuties around him had already treated him as a weird uncle. He left the commercial square regretfully, reporting seriously, outside the esports arena, in the middle of the crowd. Qin Mo glanced up, his breathing heavy. "Send me the blueprint of the entire commercial square, including the hole in the ceiling." "Yes." The Special Forces soldier replied immediately. "Young Master, are you trying to catch the suspect?" Qin Mo paused. "Suspect? Young Master, have you forgotten that the crime squad is nearby?" The soldier was holding an ice cream cone in his hand, and it was hard to tell who he was. "I saw a few plainclothes." Qin Mo's eyes dimmed. "I didn't forget." Send me the exact location of the suspect. Tell everyone to bring forward the operation. All right. The special forces would keep a record of the itinerary. Young Master's original intention was to wait until after the competition, and the movie ended before dealing with this matter. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, the magician would approach the suspect first before doing anything else. Now the operation had actually been brought forward. This really wasn't the young Master's style. Could it be that something happened? The SWAT soldier didn't understand. He stuffed the ice cream cone into his mouth and sent a message as he walked. Fishing operation commencing. Keep in touch with the coordinates. Chapter 827. With that, the elite entered the transparent elevator. Just as he was about to press the button with his left hand, a person walked over. Just then a person came over. He looked very fair and clean, and he was wearing a cinema uniform. He also wore a pair of black glasses on his face, which covered most of his face. The elite didn't take a closer look at the person. He just felt that it was weird for the cinema staff to walk over at this moment. Was he heading down to buy something? The two of them headed to the same floor. When they entered the elevator, Bojio realized that there was something wrong with the person behind her. His disguise wasn't bad, but it was because of his good disguise. That was why Bojio noticed the details. The earpiece was special. Those who didn't know wouldn't be able to tell what it was. But before her rebirth, Bojio had been in the Fifth Avenue dealing with people from all walks of life. If one took a closer look, they would be able to tell that only the military would have such earpieces. However, since when did the military learn to disguise themselves? And in such a professional manner. If she hadn't recognized the earpiece, she would have assumed that he was just an ordinary person watching a movie. Bojio watched the reflection in the elevator. She could feel him looking at her as well. His observation skills made her think of the Almighty. She seemed to have understood something. Bojio arched a brow. She buttoned the last button on her uniform, her gaze dimming. If the Almighty was here, she would have to restrain herself. The suspect would be easy to deal with. The Almighty's subordinates wouldn't be easy. The Almighty's subordinates wouldn't be easy to deal with. Fortunately, they had met here. If they had met in the cinema, she might have been at a disadvantage. Bojio lowered her lids, her lips lifting. She had underestimated the Almighty's ability. She had thought that it was just the crime squad. But now, it seemed like it wasn't just the crime squad. She really didn't know what other people were there besides this elite. What else would the people who had set up the Shadow City be like? She had never fought against the Almighty face to face. This was the first time. The true first time. With such an opponent, the game would be interesting. But the more she admired him, Bojio felt that if she really couldn't control herself and wanted to take the Almighty away one day, it wouldn't just be using her connections. Even the Almighty's subordinates wouldn't be easy to deal with. Bojio reached out to press her sleeves. She mustn't reveal the little thing inside. The elevator reached the 5th floor. She no longer cared about the whereabouts of the people behind her. She only remembered that face. Then, she walked straight to the side of a staff member and said with a smile, "Still a lot of people?" "You." The staff member wanted to say something. Bojio smiled brightly, revealing her canine teeth. "I'm a new employee." The staff also laughed. "Come and take a look. I'm going to the restroom. There are too many people today. It's going to explode. Please check the tickets carefully." "All right." Bojio turned and stood there. She was still wearing her black gloves. Her uniform and work pass were of high quality. Indeed, there wasn't a single flaw in her attire. There wasn't a problem passing off the fake as the genuine one. Seeing this, the elite man retracted his gaze and stood in front of the ticketing machine. It looked like he was collecting tickets, but he was actually on the phone. "The fish hasn't appeared yet. Wait for further instructions." After finishing this sentence, he took a sip of coffee. His movements were extremely natural, and his technique of blending into the crowd was done very well. Chapter 828. In the meeting room. After Qin Mo received all the blueprints, he scanned them from top to bottom and closed his eyes quietly. Profiling. It wasn't just targeted at criminals. A skilled profiler would be able to come up with various routes based on the environment. And Qin Mo was the best of the best in this field. Perhaps not many people knew about Qin Mo, but his code name was Young Master. Child in English. It was a name that everyone in the international community knew about. If one was in the industry and had read books in this field, he would definitely have read his thesis in an authoritative journal. Profilers were usually very good at science, especially mathematics. Deep mathematics was about logical thinking. Just like the movie Suspect, a problem might seem like a geometry problem, but in reality, it was a function problem. How to solve some problems. Placing oneself in the other party's line of thought would allow one to grasp the point quickly. If it was him, how would he come up with the escape route and be discovered? First of all, he needed to take off this eye-catching set of combat clothes. Lastly, he had to find a dark hooded jacket that wouldn't catch anyone's attention. It was far from the exit, and it would affect the time needed to leave. If there was a safe passage in between, Qin Mo opened his eyes. Like a ray of light, his gaze landed on the left side of the meeting room. It was only a few hundred meters long, and there was a fork about 100 meters away. It wasn't easy to find a single person in a video with so many people. But if there weren't many people, it wouldn't be too difficult. Qin Mo paced, his footsteps carrying the wind, but there wasn't a hint of panic. His aura was natural. He held his phone in his left hand, not bothering about the commotion on the other end, interrupting Director Huang's excitement. Get your men over to the surveillance room. Director Huang was excited. You want to help? That's great. With your ability and our ability, we will definitely succeed. Oh. Qin Mo's voice was calm. What do you intend to do? Arrest him? Director Huang narrowed his eyes. Of course, that person is too dangerous. He's an AIDS carrier and is constantly looking for new targets to kill. We aren't sure who the next target is, and we don't know who leaked the news. Just a moment ago, there was an online report about it. The media has already started an investigation, and the higher-ups have ordered us to solve the case within 48 hours. If we don't solve this case, it will be even more difficult for us to deal with the public opinion. After Qin Mo heard that, he only said one sentence. First, confirm if he is really a criminal. Even if you catch him, without evidence, everything will be in vain. This was what Director Huang was worried about. Without evidence, he could only imprison the other party for 24 hours at most. And if it wasn't this person? If news of their operation were to leak out, they would not be able to survive. It only makes people wary of the real criminals. Director Huang gritted his teeth at the thought. After all, this case was too unique. All the suspects were deduced from Qin Mo's psychological profile. However, they had not found out whether there was anyone among these people, so they could not be sure. There were too many people at the hotel that day, so he could only make a rough judgment based on their height and appearance. There were many loopholes in this judgment. You know, the higher-ups. Director Huang scratched his head. Chapter 829. With Qin Mo's words, Director Huang felt much more confident. Actually, he was under pressure. The higher-ups wanted them to solve it quickly. But the culprit's methods were too skilled and his anti-investigation ability was too strong. After the case, if it hadn't been for Qin Mo's directions, they might still be searching for a needle in a haystack. The crime squad had changed in recent years. Director Huang understood that, but fortunately, his subordinates were hot-blooded. They had sacrificed a lot to maintain the safety of the city. Actually, this was how it was like to be a detective. If they couldn't solve the case, they would be criticized by the citizens. Director Huang had to admit that some of the external staff were used to minimizing the big problem and turning it into nothing. They were used to not doing anything. He couldn't explain the system. But there was still a group of people who would stay in the car for 24 hours just to catch a criminal, afraid that they would miss any clues. And he was the same as that group of people, seeking a clear conscience in this industry. Director Huang placed the pen in his hand down and called his subordinates. They wouldn't arrest him as per Qin Mo's instructions. As for the higher-ups, at most he would be scolded again. At this moment, Qin Mo didn't go to the surveillance room. Even though he knew that if he went to the surveillance room, he would be able to find out what that guy was disguised as from the clues he had, he still didn't go. Perhaps this was Qin Mo. There was an invisible police uniform on his body. At such a moment, he could put his emotions behind him and take on all the responsibilities he could. And it was because of Qin Mo. That was why Bojo wanted to bring him back. This world was too flashy. But there was such a person. He had a clear and cold aura like a jade tree, bright and clear, aloof from the world. He would never be swallowed by the darkness. He was completely different from her. It made her heart itch just by looking at him. But Bojo didn't have the time to think about Qin Mo now. She had asked Hoshino to prepare for the day purely to get close to the suspect and find evidence while also finding clues about the person impersonating her. She didn't have the intention to leave now since the National League wasn't over. But there were some things she couldn't control. Some people used the excuse of liking her to commit evil deeds, distorting the truth and forcing her to leave early. Bojo knew that she could settle many things, but she couldn't do anything about human nature. Whether it was the organizers who pretended to be fans or those who were incited, if they did it the first time it was fine. If they did it the second time, they could say that they were still young. If they did it the third time, they knew what they were doing was hurtful. Yet they still said that they were wronged. The existence of these two people was like a small criminal base in today's society. The core of their distorted worldview was selfishness. They didn't like anything but themselves, so they didn't care about ruining other people's hard work. After all, they still had a trick up their sleeves. They could say that they used to be true fans who were forced to become anti-fans, or some groundless scandals. Being despicable was always the pass for the despicable, and this had nothing to do with age. You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.